We are live, Unchained TV, with continuous coverage of what is happening in Merced County, California. Two women, one of them a Baywatch actress, could go to jail for 6 months for rescuing two sick chickens. And we know they are sick off a slaughter truck. Let's catch up on the case. And then we're going to talk to our expert panel, which is around the country as well as outside the courthouse.
Hi, Unchained. It's Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here and covering the trial. We really appreciate it.
Young chickens are fanned up in filthy conditions before they're loaded on a truck and transported for slaughter.
We're going to go straight out to Crystal Heath, who happens to be a veterinarian and the president of Our Honor, a veterinarian group. What's happening outside court, Crystal?
We're all standing out here waiting for the jury to deliberate and come to their final conclusions. We just got out of court and heard the judge give the instructions. Attorney Chris Carraway gave his closing arguments first, and then Wayne Sean gave his. Of course, the prosecution went first, and then the defense, and then the prosecution gets the chance to rebut. So that's where we're at now. I think, the jury is really taking all of these things into consideration. They've got a lot to think about, and I think the biggest problem is going to be understanding the law and how they can rule. So that's we're just waiting for that.
Is the jury inside? We also want to say we will never get within earshot of a juror. Yeah. We don't want in any way influence the case. We're very careful about that. But they got the case. They went to lunch. Are they deliberating right now? Because you told me the last of them went in a couple of minutes ago.
They are deliberating right now. They all got lunch. Hopefully they have a full stomach and will have a chance to really think about these things and go through what the law actually says and what evidence they heard. They seem like a really thoughtful bunch, but I am super, super worried about, their confusion about the law and what they can and can't do and what rules they can and can't follow.
Wow. Okay. Fascinating. Now, I want to say that we have some people who have been in the courtroom. We're going to play some sound from many of the key participants, including a vice president of Foster Farms, Alexandra Paul, as well as the veterinarian, Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg, who testified. But let me go to Emic Echo. You've been in the court. What is the reaction of the jurors?
So we've been watching them. It's been very interesting to see Kirsten explaining the chickens had some form of COVID virus, which was deadly to animals, not only animals, but to humans and their pets. So this company is saying that they are processing the sick animals and sell them as pet foods. And I think that created a shock in the jurors. Now I feel like everybody's kind of hungry for the truth rather than the imaginary accusations the other side is bringing up. I'm just expecting a positive result no matter what, because this is a win-win situation in my eyes. Everybody's informed about how the government is not functioning to protect us, to protect the animals, and they are just acting like tools for these corporations who are doing big mistakes and terrible neglect that could affect all of our lives negatively.
You mentioned testimony by a veterinarian who took the stand yesterday, and I think it was the bombshell testimony of the entire trial. He described how sick the two birds that were rescued are. Listen to this, because it is really kind of alarming. when you hear her talk about what these birds were sick with, then we'll discuss on the other side.
They were infected with an extremely contagious coronavirus called infectious bronchitis virus. It's a very, up to, or not up to, 100% of birds that are exposed will get sick. Very contagious virus. They also were infected with 2 bacteria that can make human beings sick.
And what were those 2 bacteria?
Enterococcus faecium and E. coli.
I think you previously testified that enterococcus infections in hospital lead to up to 66.7% of patients dying, correct?
Correct.
Are there a large number of people nationwide who die of enterococcus infections?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the most common infections. One of the most common nosocomial infections that we have today, and it's actually increasing.
What is nosocomial?
Nosocomial infections are infections that come from hospitals. So you go into the hospital to get maybe a knee surgery or something like that, and you end up inadvertently contracting Enterococcus faecium. And literally studies have been done where these organisms in hospitals have been traced back to chickens in grocery stores. So, and if you do get unlucky enough to get one of these infections in the hospital, these are multi-drug resistant bacteria, so the antibiotics that the doctors want to use on you, they don't work. Maybe you get lucky and they do, but up to 66.7% of people will die.
Wow, that I want to get round robin on what people are thinking about that testimony and what the jurors might be thinking about that testimony. Not to mention, what would they have for lunch after hearing that testimony? Paige Parsons wrote,
I can't imagine that anyone would want to eat wings or chicken breasts or anything along those lines, not knowing if your chicken is one that's been infected. So that's the question that is, I think, grappling perhaps in the jury's mind to think about the future of food, their food choices that does impact what is being grown and being bred.
yes, and we have a very large panel today because we don't know how long they're going to be deliberating. They could come back in a half an hour. They could come back in 2 days. Remember, people, this is a misdemeanor theft case. So I want to go to Nathan Semmel. You are our attorney, and ask you about, how is this going to come down? Is this one charge per person? There's 2 defendants, Alexandra Paul and Alicia Santurio. Is it literally one? Are they guilty of misdemeanor theft, 1 count, and that's it? Because that's going to make it a lot faster, I would think, if there's only 1 count for each person.
Well, I would suggest, first of all, they're not guilty of 1 count of petty larceny, but the jury will be instructed to consider each of them separately and each on the sole charge of petty theft. That's the whole case.
I mean, but what I'm trying to say is it's not like an 18 count in conspiracy indictment, okay? That was the Michael Jackson case where, it took you had to talk to experts to even understand what the charges were. These are pretty simple charges, correct?
If you blink, you might miss it. It's going to be 1 count per person, and you're going to hear either guilty or not guilty, or there's always the possibility that the jury can't reach a unanimous verdict, which it happens, not that often, but it does happen. And again, there'll be I imagine, because the evidence is pretty much the same against both of them, that whatever happens to Alicia will happen to Alexandra and vice versa.
And I want to play the video at the center of this case, and then we'll talk about it, because after you see the video, we're going to go to Wayne Shung, the defense attorney for Alexandra Paul, taking her through each step of the video. Because at first glance, it kind of looks like 2 women running up and grabbing chickens. But when you get down to the details, you see it's a very, very different story. So let's take a look now at the actual rescue. Again, the jury is deliberating right now, and we could have a decision any moment. It's one charge, I believe, for each woman. Let's take a look at Wayne Chung, the defense attorney, just breaking that chase scene down. And then I want to get everybody's reaction to how the defense handled what on the surface might appear to be just an open and shut, theft case. Au contraire.
Why are you running on this video?
Well, I'm running because I didn't want the truck to move. I didn't really know what was going on at the slaughterhouse gate, so I didn't want the truck to move because there were chickens on there that might need help. And secondly, I didn't want to be stopped by anybody from Foster Farm so that I couldn't help a chicken.
Were you running to avoid the authorities?
I didn't see any authorities there. So no, I was not running to avoid the authorities.
I'm going to keep playing. Keep this one on. What did you see when you ran up behind, I guess, the rig of the truck, or I guess it's the front of the rig? What did you see in the cages when you ran up behind the truck?
I saw many, many chickens. I smelled, that was what I first, was the smell. That it was like Alicia said it was sort of an indescribable smell. I think of ammonia, just a really strong smell of ammonia, of feces. And there were lots of chickens crammed into very small cages.
And what did you observe in the particular chicken that you removed from the truck?
So Alicia opened the cage and Jax was right there. And he did not move away from me when the cage was opened, even though here I was, a human looming over him. Other chickens moved away. It was my first hint that he wasn't well, because the instinct of a chicken would be to move away. And he had a very pink comb. Chickens are, and Alicia explained about a comb, they're supposed to be red, deep red, and his was pink. He also had feces on his belly, which indicated that he'd probably been sitting in his feces for a while, which no mammal likes, no creature, I think, likes to do that.
All right, let's go out to Donnie Moss. What's your reaction to her explanation, the defendant's explanation of why she took that chicken?
She is a really compelling defendant, and if I'm a juror, I'm listening to that testimony about what the chickens look like and what they're enduring and thinking, now I understand why this isn't just a petty theft case, despite the fact that that's what the charge is. This is much bigger. They had already heard, I'm not sure the order, but they also heard the testimony of Dr. Rosenberg talking about how sick these chickens were. Then they hear this testimony about what they appeared, in person to how they impacted this sort of one activist, or how they appeared to this one activist. It's got to be disturbing to the jurors. So that's my reaction to her presentation.
All right, let's get some other reactions. Ellen Dent, your reaction to her explanation for why she took the chickens.
I mean, there's just so much more to it for the reason why they grabbed those two individuals, Jax and Ethan. They assessed their condition in that, few seconds or millisecond to see that they were in so much need of help and of being rescued. So I think it's so intelligent that they literally broke down the characteristics that they were looking for in the individuals that they did take off of the truck.
I want to go out to James Madison, who just joined us. You've been observing the trial. Please unmute and tell us what you think the jury's reaction is. We're getting a lot of female perspective. There are some men on the jury. What is your sense? Not just because you're a guy, you could obviously also have perceptive commentary about the reactions of the women, but your sense of the jury, James.
I think that anyone who's listened to Wayne Chung's testimony and his final statement, it was so compelling that no matter what, like the prosecutor said after that, I would think that it would be much more important what Wayne said. In fact, it was bringing tears to my eyes.
What did he say?
Just the way he explained about the how the defendants were so caring for the animals, and they had no objective of stealing an animal for their own purpose, but the purpose was to care for the animals, and that the animals were very much in need of health care and they're very sick. So it was definitely, in my opinion, a rescue and not
And let me ask you,
like someone just randomly going up and doing a prank and stealing chickens.
when he was giving his closing argument, what was the jurors' reaction? What were their facial reactions? Did you get any sense? It's very hard to read jurors, but you were there in the courtroom.
I think they were pretty shocked a little bit, and they were, shocked in a point of thinking about how can this be, like, in our food system? How could these chickens be treated this way? And so many sick chickens, and also the fact that there's potentially a massive disease that can spread across the whole United States just from one truck. But there's thousands of chickens on one truck, and there's multiple trucks per day. And so I think the jury, I'm imagining that they're very upset about that, or they're wondering where they're going to think twice about actually eating what they're going to eat for lunch.
Wow,
and they're
interesting.
going to feed their pets for food as well. One other note is that they actually had mentioned that the chickens were not fit for human consumption, that those go off and become rendered and become dog food and cat food. So, with these types of diseases, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want my animal or my pet to be eating food like that.
And I want to point out, Foster Farms is invited on any time. And there was a Foster Farms vice president who testified. I'm going to play his testimony right now, and we can comment on that. What struck me is how different the words used to describe what's happening. In other words, the activists say slaughterhouse, the prosecution and the vice president say processing. It's a very different language. Listen and you'll hear, and then we can discuss on the other side. This is a vice president of Foster Farms testifying at the very end of the trial. This is direct examination.
What is Foster Farms' business?
We're in the business of processing chicken and turkeys for food for the United States.
Does Foster Farm use the full chicken for food and products?
Yes.
Okay. What processes does Foster Farm use to derive food and products from your chickens?
Well, there's the typical production process for the meat for human consumption, and then we have a supplemental rendering process for all other products.
What is rendering?
Rendering is effectively taking the components of the production process that have no use, and you derive a useful material from them.
What are some of these materials that are derived from the process?
It's primarily meat meal, fat, and feta meal.
All right, your reaction to that. Let's get somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Dotsie Bausch, your reaction to the vice president's use of words when describing sort of a very similar process versus those women on trial and the attorneys for those women.
I think he meant to say body parts. I mean, it is really it's like a schooling in total humane washing of the public. All of these terms that just sound like they are tin cans or parts of cars, but it's an actual living, breathing being that they are processing and rendering and taking parts from to not use. And as it relates to that, we have talked about the American Humane Association and their gold stamp that they put on Foster Farms. And I just wanted to add that Alexandra told me last night that she got a chance to talk on the stand about AHA and talk about that it was almost entirely solely funded by the factory farming industry and that it's a sham. So
let me read that so that we can put that into context, Dotsie. So what you're referring to is the American Humane Association Foster Farms issued a statement saying that their highest priority is the welfare of the flocks entrusted in our care. In 2013, the company became the first major poultry producer to be independently audited and certified by the American Humane Association and continues to receive outstanding animal welfare audit scores, and goes on to say Direct Action Everywhere is an extremist organization, and that all their team members get comprehensive annual animal welfare training. So in the context of the Foster Farm statement that I just read, what is the point that you were making now? I think people who aren't aware of that organization might understand it a little bit better.
Right. Well, we have been discussing it for, I don't know, 8 nights now, and just that it's what a sham it is, because it is almost entirely, and I'm going to say almost entirely because no one's sure if there's 1% coming from other source, but way upwards of 90% funded by the factory farming industry. So the people that are paying them to say what they say, I mean, the conflict of interest, ring up any bells. What my point is that I didn't realize this till last night. Alexandra got a chance to discuss that on the stand yesterday and talk about the sham that is AHA.
Yeah, and
so the jurors heard that. Obviously.
That's fantastic. And thank you for that information, Dotsie. And I want to point out that I'll also invite, and the American Humane Association is invited on anytime. Just if you're joining us, the jury is deliberating right now. We're going to go out very quickly to Crystal Heath, the reporter on the scene. Tell us what's going on. I know there were dozens of supporters of Direct Action Everywhere there. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening outside court?
We're all just standing around waiting for the jury to finish deliberating. It might be a while, but we'll see what happens. And everybody's, hopefully feeling pretty optimistic, but you never know what's going to happen. I see Attorney Chris Carraway is walking up. If you guys want to talk to him, I can.
And he's
see if he wants to talk.
What is his official role? I don't want to misstate it.
He's Alicia's attorney.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's talk to Alicia's attorney.
Cool.
For sure.
I'll see if he wants to talk.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe he can bring us up to date.
Hey, Chris, do you want to talk to Jane Unchained?
Unchained TV. Unchained TV.
Unchained TV.
Yes. Hi there. So how do you feel? The jury's deliberating. We've got a huge panel of experts and participants here. Are you confident, or do you think it's going to be a long deliberation?
I think there's a lot for the jury to talk about. And, I think we presented a much more compelling case and strong case than the prosecution ever anticipated. I think they thought this was going to be a cakewalk. And if anything, the last 2 weeks showed it very much wasn't. And there were a lot of compelling reasons why what Alicia and Alexandra did was not just the right thing to do, but was a lawful thing to do. And, we're hoping that the jury takes their time and sort of consider that and come to the just and compassionate result, which is an acquittal, which is what I think they should do.
There is just one charge for each woman. Is that correct? And it's a misdemeanor theft charge. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have you ever seen this kind of, I'm just trying to imagine how much it has cost the prosecution and the taxpayers of California to prosecute this case. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a complete waste of judicial resources and just a misapplication of judicial discretion. And, it's an exceptional case. If this were just some regular old petty theft from like a Target or something, it would never have this much attention. And I think that's because, you'll see how the law will bend to protect not just regular people who are victims of theft, but large companies like Foster Farms, and sort of the collusion that you can see, between the accessibility of a Foster Farms executive who will drop everything to come testify in a petty theft case. I mean, a lot of this is exceptional, and it's not how things usually are. And again, I think the DA thought this was a cakewalk, and it very much wasn't.
Did you believe it when the prosecution reportedly said in court, "Oh, we had no idea that Wayne Chung was the co-founder of DXC"? Like, seems crazy to me. Did you buy it? I mean, either way, I think it's damning. If they didn't know, it's damning, and if they did know, they were being duplicitous.
I'm not really surprised at the lack of diligence and laziness a prosecutor will have. So that wasn't surprising at all. And I think at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, because if they knew or if they didn't know, they shouldn't be disclosing that late in trial. And I think it is a product of how they didn't take this case seriously. And through our work and our defense, we showed them how serious of a case it is. So to me, it doesn't really matter. But, it also isn't unreasonable for me to think that they just started paying attention to this case 4 days into trial, and we're learning things that they could have learned. The apathy is not surprising.
I want to give our panel that really everybody here has gone out of their way to make themselves available. What questions do you have for the defense attorney for Alicia Santurio, the co-defendant here in this case? Any questions? Oh, Carla, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. I don't know if this is all that important at this point, but in the back of my mind, I was wondering if Foster Farms ever did come up with any more paperwork that they were supposed to have presented to you guys about the facts of, dead, diseased chickens on their farm.
No. Despite the fact that, we had actual documents from undercover investigation showing that there should be additional documents. All the court did was order them to go look for those specific documents, and they claimed there were none. They claimed, they don't retain those records, which, I kind of found hard to believe, but we were in the middle of trial, so, that was sort of the extent in which we could have pushed it. But I certainly think there was an effort on Foster Farms to muddy up the subpoena process so they don't have to disclose records, and I think they are hiding things.
I have a question. How is it possible that this very serious illnesses that Dr. Sherston Rosenberg described, I mean, that to me should make headlines. That to me should be a very important thing. And it just kind of came out toward the end of the trial. I'm not really understanding, in the news, they have this phrase, bury the lead. It was almost like the lead was buried. All of a sudden, the last day of the trial, she describes how these two birds were not only sick, but sick with very serious illnesses that have the potential to pose a threat to human health, according to her testimony.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was some of the most shocking information. And, unfortunately, we were not allowed to show the videos from inside the slaughterhouse, which just showed the breakneck speeds in which, the workers had to process birds. And it sort of really raises the question, are they doing their diligence to separate sick birds that are a risk to people or otherwise consumers such as pets, and not. So it is very concerning, but unfortunately, I mean, that's fairly par for the course in that industry where it's just about squeezing the most amount of money with the least amount of diligence and care and compassion.
Wow. And how is your client, Alicia Santurio, holding up? Is she nearby? I mean, let's say in 2 minutes they say there's a verdict. How long is it going to take everybody to gather, or is everybody nearby?
I think everyone's within 10 minutes. I went and grabbed coffee, but she's doing great. I mean, Alicia and Alexandra have been wonderful clients. We are working for them, and, they have shown and really led with how brave they've been and how steadfast they've been. And, we've really taken their lead in that regard.
I know our panel is very curious. You must have questions. Mick Davudian,
Yeah, I do have a question. So, Chris, they released the videos from the court at the end of the day on YouTube, and you have to cram it all in, and the audio isn't very clear. Can you speak to something that I'm a little confused about? I believe it was during jury instructions that you and Wayne and there was a third attorney on the defense side were arguing against something related to a co-conspirator or a conspiracy or something of that
Aiding and
nature.
abetting.
Can you talk to that and what happened to that?
Yeah, I can try. There's a train passing by. The prosecution added at the very last minute an additional theory of criminal liability of aiding and abetting, which, generally they sort of charge it. Alicia is responsible for stealing Ethan. Alexandra is responsible for stealing Jax. But instead, under theory aiding and abetting, they're both liable. It's like they acted in concert. They helped each other out. And it's sort of a broader theory of criminal liability. Now, ultimately, that doesn't change, our fundamental defenses, that they were both acting in an honest, good faith belief that their conduct under the circumstances was lawful, and that the neglect that Foster Farms has shown these birds and the liabilities they pose to themselves, other birds, people, consumers, showed they had no value. But I think it's just another example of the prosecution not taking this case seriously and trying to change things up last minute. Certainly they don't have to plead aiding and abetting at an early stage. They're allowed to do that, and that's why ultimately the court permitted it. But I think it is a symptom of just a broader apathy the prosecution originally had for this case.
But what would be the impact of aiding and abetting? I'm not sure I understand how that works.
Well, so for instance, let's say the jurors believed that Jax was not sick or did not meet the conditions to justify a rescue, or that Jax had value. Now, without aiding and abetting, Alicia would just be responsible for Ethan, and she could arguably be acquitted because Ethan had no value. But if the juror finds, and this is an oversimplification of the aiding and abetting instruction, but if the juror finds that Alicia sort of assisted Alexandra's plan to save Jax, then Alicia would be liable for the theft of Jax. So it's a broader theory of liability where each defendant is liable for both birds and vice versa.
But does that come in the form of a different charge, an additional charge? Like usually conspiracy is like an additional charge.
No, it's just a different theory of liability. In a lot of states, it's complicity. Conspiracy, the criminal act is actually having an agreement to do a criminal purpose. They certainly could have tried adding that as another charge at some point. But aiding and abetting, similar to complicity in many states, that's something that they can sort of just bring up last minute. And that's permitted by sort of local rules, California procedure, things like that.
Wow. Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Donnie Moss, go.
Did the jury ask any questions when all was said and done? And also, was the jury aware of the fact that the defense wanted to show footage and was unable to?
I think the jurors might have picked up that we wanted to introduce footage, based on some of our questions, but we weren't allowed to sort of stand up there and argue we wanted to show you the video, but the prosecution wouldn't let you. Now, whether the jurors had any questions, we finished closing arguments and we immediately took a break for lunch. So the jurors didn't start deliberating until about, half an hour ago. I would presume that they are, picking a four-person, doing their initial discussions, and they are allowed to ask questions, legal questions, not factual questions like they were of the witnesses. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Each juror, each case is going to be different.
Nathan, you had a question. Nathan Semmel, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney. Go.
Hey, Chris, it's good to see you. You've done a tremendous job.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Did you have a sense from, seeing how the jury has reacted to things that have been said, how they have received the idea that Alexandra and Alicia relied upon experts and counsel prior to rescuing the animals?
You know, to be perfectly honest, the jury was really hard to read during this trial. It wasn't really until closing arguments, where, we were able to get, chuckles out of the juries at appropriate times. And, I think some of the jurors were particularly moved by Wayne's closing remarks. But, beyond that, the jurors really seemed incredibly hard to read. And, I think a lot of people will have friction with the idea that you can take someone's stuff and say, well, an attorney told me I could do that. But that's why I made sure to reinforce during my closing argument, you may disagree with that. But, you swore an oath to sort of apply that law as is. And, I'm hoping that, they take that oath seriously. And, generally in my experience, I've done a lot of jury trials. Jurors really do. They take their service as a juror incredibly seriously in a lot of the cases that I've done. And, we certainly, all the jurors that are there certainly had more than enough ability to talk themselves out of jury service and get them challenged for cause. So we really do believe the ones that remained wanted to be there, were curious about the case, and will be able to sort of apply the law.
And, sometimes in these trials, you have a disagreement amongst the jurors where, like, there's one holdout who absolutely believes one side. So, there are many cases where the jurors come back and say, we cannot reach a decision, Your Honor. And then usually the judge says, go back and try harder. And if they come back 2 and 3 times, then they declare a mistrial. They have to decide whether they're going to try it again. That's one possibility. If you had to guess, maybe I shouldn't ask this could be an inappropriate question to ask the attorney himself. Do you think we'll have a verdict by the end of the day today?
You're asking me to jinx myself.
I
don't know. I've had good verdicts come back immediately. I've had bad verdicts come back immediately. Same, I've had good verdicts take 2 days. I've had bad verdicts take 2 days. You'd be surprised at sort of where the juror conversations go, what they focus on. Sometimes it's exactly what you highlighted for them. Sometimes it's some completely collateral issue that you didn't think was of significance. So it's really hard to predict, and it's even harder to predict if they come back fast, what does that mean? Or if they're taking a long time, what does that mean? There's no rule there, and if there was, there certainly wouldn't be any. There would be plenty of exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think? Last question for me. If anybody else has questions, certainly. Do you think that this entire county is flabbergasted with what this case has begun? It's a misdemeanor theft trial. I, frankly, have not heard of too many jury trials for a misdemeanor theft charge. But then you have the Direct Action Everywhere group holding almost daily demonstrations. This is just one of them outside the court, outside the district attorney's office, with flares. I mean, it's hard to ignore, although local media seems to have made a pretty serious point of trying to ignore it. But do you think they're kind of like their jaws are open, like what WTF, for lack of a better word?
I think there's a lot of curiosity. I mean, we've noticed the mayor of Merced sitting in the audience the last few days, and this is not a normal petty theft trial. I've certainly never been part of any misdemeanor trial, frankly, that's gone this long. Most misdemeanor trials I've done have been shorter than jury selection in this case. And so I think it's raising a lot of eyebrows, and more importantly, it's having people really second guess what Foster Farms is doing. Because I think one important thing we learned through jury selection, which was shocking to me, I thought we're here, Foster Farms is a large employer. There might be a lot of, allegiances, but we found the opposite. Tons of jurors are like, I have a brother, a friend, a cousin who works for Foster Farms, and they don't treat them well. And that was shocking. I mean, that wasn't surprising to me because many of these factory farms treat their employees terribly, as well as their animals. But it was shocking to find such open sentiment.
We just lost him. And by the way, we invite Foster Farms on anytime at all to respond to anything that has been said at all by anybody on this panel. I want to just get reaction to what you just heard. Paige, I saw you acting, your face was sort of in shock.
Well, what I was shocked by is how many employees there are, I guess, working there, and that would be, I mean, there's a large possibility of people to be on the jury. And so to have them, speak the truth. So I've read interviews. I know Ellen Dent has worked tirelessly with the media to bring stories of factory farm workers, the stories to the forefront about what happens behind these closed doors. So I think if we were to, have this jury really deliberate on what this means for, for the future of the changes that could be happening in these factory farms.
Yeah, but that's not what they're supposed to, I mean, that's not, okay, you've raised a very good point. How wide ranging can these conversations in the jury room get? I mean, while they're supposed to be just looking at these specific issues, you said they can go anywhere, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that nobody really knows unless you sit on a jury is what is being said in that room, because that door is closed and nobody else is allowed in there. So it's, they are supposed to follow the instructions and follow the law, but how they, arrive at their verdict can be a mystery. I've spoken to jurors afterwards, and I have left, like Chris said, sometimes, I'm scratching my head. I don't understand. Sometimes I'm happy with the verdict, and I don't really quite understand what they're saying to me, how they arrived at the conclusion they did. So, I think sometimes jurors like to play investigator to some extent. I think they like to discuss, in appropriate cases, public policy. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think it's important for them to hear each other out, talk about all of the issues. And, the one thing we haven't really discussed yet is juries always have one out. It's not something that they get charged on because it's technically not legal for them to do it. But again, because the jury room is closed and jurors don't have to explain their verdict, juries can do what's called nullify. They can find a person not guilty because they like them, they feel sorry for them, they don't want to see them punished. These are reasons that they're not supposed to find somebody guilty or not guilty of. But again, juries either find someone guilty or not guilty. They never have to explain their verdict.
Yeah, a jury nullification. And, it happens all the time. It doesn't have to be an official thing. Obviously, a sympathetic defendant, I've covered a lot of criminal cases. The truth is that sometimes if you're an attractive defendant, you can get a break that wouldn't an unattractive defendant could get. And that's just, that's human nature. They bring all aspects into the courtroom. So I want to go back to Dotsie Bausch. You're a friend of Alexandra Paul. You do a podcast with her. She is, a very likable person. I'm not saying that as somebody who's, I would just say, if I were deciding on a case, I would say, wow, she's an interesting defendant who's very likable. Yeah, you could unmute if you could. Thanks.
I think you're pretty hard pressed, as somebody has said on this panel, to find a better human than Alexandra. So they're up against a rock and a hard place. And I think it's kind of important maybe to, take us back to the very beginning and some quotes from Alexandra when she said, this case is not about winning or losing for me or for Alicia. It is all about setting a precedent for the right to rescue, which I think, from what it sounds, has been done no matter what the verdict is.
So you're saying it's a win for Alexandra and her supporters, no matter what the jury, which is deliberating right now, comes back with? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. That's what she communicated to me. I mean, I literally asked her if she was, scared to go to prison. And she's like, oh my God, I'll have a bed and I'll have 3 squares a day and there won't be my own feces in my bed. That's what the chickens have. It's going to be better than what the chickens have. I mean, she didn't even hesitate. That's what she spat out. So yeah, brave souls they are.
Wow. So again, the jury is deliberating as we speak. We have no idea how long they might take. They could take 10 more minutes. They could take 4 days. I mean, you really do not know. And I have to say, honestly, this is the hardest part of covering a trial, because you have to know, well, when should we start coverage? But let me tell you something. You can never predict a jury. And I cannot tell you how many times cases that I've covered, and I covered criminal cases for many decades, where literally both sides have gone off, literally half an hour, 45 minutes away, because they thought there's no way there's going to be a verdict. Whoop, call them back, and they've got a race to get back. And the judge always gives, obviously, both sides, the attorneys and also those family members, et cetera, a chance to get back. So we don't know. That's why we started when we knew the jury was going to deliberate. There are famous cases where the jury stays out for 45 minutes and comes back on a case that has a lot of intricacy. But this case is more intricate than it may seem on its surface. Carla, you're nodding your head.
Absolutely. I mean, having been there for the jury selection, I found it absolutely fascinating. And I agree with the assessment that this jury is a good jury for whatever that's worth. They listened intently. They were very forthcoming with different aspects of their lives that they thought might cause them to have a bias one way or the other. As was mentioned, several of them had ties to foster farms. Some people had ties to foster farms on the workers' side, and some people had ties to foster farms through managerial positions in other stores that do business with foster farms. And I feel like the jurors that were ultimately picked when they started were not really thrilled, quite honestly, with perhaps being here for this misdemeanor charge for 2 chickens. But you could see over the course of the days that the jury was picked that people were actually, and I could hear some of the prospective jurors behind me in the seats now talking about their interest in what was going on. And they were definitely starting to become really curious about why this was happening. And so I think that they are going to be diligently deliberating all of the facts of the case. And I'm just riveted. I hope that they do take their time and really go over everything that was presented to them. And as was said by others, I think that this is a win either way. I know that Alicia and Alexandra are stating that they are simply proxies for Jax and Ethan, and the fact that their stories have been told, that the story is getting out there. Thank you, Jane, for covering this. It makes a huge difference to bring these facts, the facts of what is happening in these factory farms, to the wider public so that they are more informed about what's happening.
Thank you for that. And it's a team effort, I have to tell you. Say something. What would you like to say, Emek?
So I totally agree with Carla. Also, one of the good questions was from the jury. They were wondering if these sick, diseased animals could be reintroduced back to the food chain. And Shurston again explained it really well, that these birds were so sick that even if they continue to live and may appear healthy, they still carry these serious diseases in their bodies and it could still spread. So I think that gave them a good understanding of how negligent the government and the corporation is about attending to the sickness and the diseases that are going on. So I'm in total shock even to this day to hear these kind of things. And I understand that this was a great service from Alexandra and Alicia and the activists to the public, informing what's really going on. And we have to hold the government and district attorney and all offices accountable of this neglect that could kill us all. And this has to be changed.
Jane, can I do a quick follow-up to what Emmett just said? Yeah. So first of all, I think I'm incredibly touched by what Dotsie read, as far as Alexandra's comments about comically saying, yeah, she'll have a bed and 3 meals a day. The reality is, I've never been to jail, but we all know it's not going to be a fun thing. So setting that aside, these are truly heroes. A lot of us know these are heroes in our current lifetime. The general public out there doesn't realize this, and probably a decade or 2 decades from now, when things have changed and evolved to a point where the majority sees the criminality of what we're doing as a society at this time, then they'll truly be recognized as the heroes they are. They are selfless. They are another level of human. And if you notice, Emek was talking a moment ago, that black and green you see on her going across her chest, that's not a sash. She's wearing a sling because she's still suffering from injuries for the action she took several months ago on the football field. So these are truly heroes of our society.
And I don't have a bad stomach. My neighbor is drilling next door. If you're hearing some odd sounds, hear that? That's not me. Okay. I want to play, in all seriousness, what I found very surprising. I didn't think that chickens were going to be able to be shown during this trial, but they were. Let's check this video out, and then we'll discuss on the other side. This is Kirsten Rosenberg testifying, and she's talking about the birds. And we see video, and the jurors saw video of the 2 birds in question.
So we can see the bird here. He is trying to stand, and he's unable to. And his right leg is extended out to the side. That's very unusual. You can see these guys are both kind of sitting. There's food in front of them. They didn't walk over to the food. You can see that the food has been brought to them because they are unable to get to the food. And that's something that's really important to think about too, because on a farm, of course there's food and water out, but the birds have to be able to walk over to the food and water in order to consume it. And so if they are unable to walk, that's basically a death sentence because they're going to starve to death.
Wow. Reactions. I want to just get everybody's reaction. Maybe by that time he'll stop drilling, starting with Donnie Moss.
Well, sure. Foster farms would have everyone thinking that they're consuming healthy chickens, that are raised out in fields and whatnot. So that footage, that testimony from Dr. Rosenberg really has to hit them in the gut. I'd also just want to pose one question about the right to rescue, just to follow up on what Dotsie was mentioning. I think that this trial has introduced the concept of right to rescue into the mainstream, not only through this live stream, but also I believe through the title of the LA Times story. But even if the defendants win and are found not guilty, does that establish some sort of legal right to rescue? Maybe Nathan knows the answer to that.
Excellent question. Nathan, take it away.
I would say probably not, in the sense that, for it to be legal, there would probably have to be a law passed, I would think. But I think it would certainly cause prosecutors to hesitate to bring these cases. If they keep losing them, it would be surprising that they would continue. Why would they continue to bring them? And I would think that the industries, these factory farms, would not want them to do that. I mean, I'm surprised this one was brought. To be honest with you, I understand that like 5 plea offers were made to Alexandra and Alicia, and they turned down every one of them. But yeah, I think it would require some sort of legislation to make rescue legal.
More about precedent, right?
Yes. Exactly.
And let me talk a little bit about what you're referring to is the fact that Wayne Chung, who is the attorney representing Alexandra Paul, was recently acquitted for going into the Smithfield factory farm for pigs and taking out 2 sick piglets. Here is video that he himself and his organization actually with 360-degree high-tech cameras videotaped going into the Smithfield slaughterhouse. They videotaped it themselves and then they distributed it.
So Circle 4 is a farm that processes and kills 1.2 million pigs every year.
We're about to head into Circle 4. This is the heart of evil. You can already hear the screams of the other pigs inside. They're cramped, they're suffering, and we're going to try and expose what's actually happening inside. You guys ready to go? Mm-hmm. Let's put our lights on.
Hell on earth. Hell on earth. And that's 10 seconds. These videos go on for hours. And he was acquitted. He defended himself. This just happened a few months ago. Very similar case, same organization, direct action everywhere, same people involved. Wayne Chung, defendant, representing himself in one case, an attorney representing Alexandra Paul in another case, this one in California, the one the jury's deliberating right now. Listen to Wayne's closing argument, and then we're going to discuss, because did the prosecution in this case look at that case and say, wow, they were acquitted? Maybe if we put these people on trial, they'll be acquitted too? Who knows?
I wish I could tell you the full story of what happened. We were on very direct orders to talk only about, March 7th, 2017, only about 2 piglets. But it's an interesting thing hearing someone as compelling as Vaughn, and he's a very compelling speaker, talk about what's in your heart in a way that you know is not true. It's not. And honestly, the best way to explain it is the way Rick explained it, that there's a big difference between stealing an animal and trying to help someone who needs some help. And I think at the end of this closing argument, we'll be convinced, hopefully, that that's all we're trying to do. But I did want to go back to where we started. In our opening statement, or I should say my opening statement, not our opening statement, that we talked about how there were no piglets taken from gestation form. And we don't have to worry about that. Count 1 is done. We're not talking about gestation billings. The prosecution's conceded, and the judge ruled that we don't have to deal with that charge. But these 2 pieces are still very important. And the first piece is that we didn't have any purpose to take anything of value from Smithfield. We were there to document conditions and save lives.
All right, I want to go to Emic Echo. You were in court. Was Wayne's closing in this case, where he's not representing himself, he's representing Alexandra Paul, was it similar to that? Because that tape, that was just this morning, and we haven't turned that around yet.
Yes, I think it was really powerful again. And I even have tears at the end of his talk. Like, you never know what to expect with these closings, but I think Wayne was to the point, very honest, showing what was really happening, what Alicia and Alexandra's goal was, rescuing 2 chickens, and he pointed it was just 2 chickens rescued to make a statement, to inform the public about what's going on. And we have to listen to his closing because it was really powerful, emotional, and honest. And I'm also, I want people to watch the videos we uploaded again on YouTube and see for themselves. Like, the whole case was really well done by our side. The lawyers studied and worked really hard on showing what the intent of these 2 activists, these 2 brave women who are informing the public about the dangers of factory farming, abusing animals, animal exploitation. And we just want the government to do something about this before it's too late, before everybody's dead and everything's lost. And it's time for them to take action. And also other people talked about Merced Mayer appearing in the court. I saw him 3 times already. I'm curious about what he's going to do, because he heard the sides and he knows there's a criminal business going on in here. I wonder what he's going to do in his jurisdiction, if he's going to act on it or if he's going to just stay quiet like the government is doing right now.
And again, we invite foster farms on anytime. They have not been criminally charged. Actually, Alexandra Paul said the reason that they went on the chicken rescue operation, the open rescue, was that they had tried to get the district attorney to prosecute based on their undercover investigation. I'll show you a snippet of the undercover investigation, and then we'll hear what Alexandra said about it, and then we'll get everybody's reaction. Then we're going to go outside to court to see what's happening. These are individuals. Before we go to the next video, let's go back out to court. I believe that Zoe Rosenberg is there with Happy Hen Sanctuary. Bring us up to date, Zoe. It's great to see you. I know that Happy Hen Sanctuary has suffered from the flooding. You can tell us about that as well. What's going on?
Yeah, so Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary, which is a 40-acre farm animal sanctuary in San Luis Obispo and home to over 200 rescued animals, mostly rescued from factory farms and slaughterhouses. We've kind of faced some really severe damages in the storms over the last few months, but the storm yesterday, or I guess Tuesday, really took a huge hit on the sanctuary, and the lower part of our property, the lower poultry housing on our property, is largely destroyed. Two of the barns down there are basically tilted because the entire ground is sinking. There's terrible erosion, and we've had to evacuate all of the animals from that area. Luckily, everyone is safe, but we don't have long-term housing for all of those animals elsewhere on the property, so we need to repair what all the damage, and so we're trying to raise money, and we're hoping that the community can come together, because animal sanctuaries are where all the animals in cases like this go. It's they're really integral to the animal rights movement as a whole.
Where can they donate? If they can donate, what's the website? I'll put it right up.
Thank you so much, Jane. And yeah, people can donate on our website, happyhen.org/donate. Or if it's easier for you, we also have on Instagram a fundraiser that's embedded into our bio, which is at Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary on Instagram.
Absolutely. And I never ask people to do something I don't do. I will donate immediately as soon as this broadcast is over. That is horrific. It breaks my heart. Please, everybody, help the Happy Hen Sanctuary. And Zoe is also a member of Direct Action Everywhere and has done. Oh, there's Curtis Vollmer. Wow, the whole gang is gathered there. Crystal, tell us about the mood outside. I mean, I've covered many trials, and I get so nervous. You'd think I was on trial during the deliberations, the anxiety. It's not something I handle well. What's it like? Is there anxiety amongst the folks out there?
Jane, just real quick, I just wanted to let you know that all of the videos are on YouTube from this morning, so you can watch the jury instructions and the closing arguments from everybody if you wanted to play that on your broadcast. It's all on YouTube.
Excellent, thank you. And how are you feeling? Are you anxiety-ridden about what's going on? Is there a nervousness?
I don't know. I was talking with Almira earlier, and it's weird. Definitely after the Smithfield trial and being all embedded in all of that. We didn't really think that we were going to win that at all. at all. So it was a complete shocker. And so now we're kind of like, oh wow, like we have a chance. So there's this like, feeling now. There is a tension in the air. Whereas before we were kind of like, we gave it our best, probably going to lose. We were, 90% sure that we were going to lose. And it was just this, oh my God, huge thing. So now we know that we can win, and it's possible. So there's definitely some more, I feel like there's a little bit more jitters than there was before.
And you never know. You never know what's going to happen in these trials. Are people gathering? Because I know at the Smithfield trial, they literally had speakers. They were playing what was happening in court. It's a different situation because this is not being broadcast on WebEx. But yes, people are gathering. These are mostly DXC supporters, I would assume. Don't want to speak for all of them. But yeah, they're there outside the courthouse. It's a waiting game, people. And we're waiting along with them as the jury deliberates inside that courtroom. How are you feeling, Crystal?
It's kind of weird because I actually had faith in Utah, and I have faith now. I thought, there was a chance that we would win Utah, but like the consequences of so many years in prison is so scary. Whereas this is like 6 months, and nobody likes to spend time in jail. That sounds horrible. But it's 6 months, and it's a kind of an interesting life experience, and I think it would be great for the narrative to have,
oh God.
But
She hasn't been to jail.
You haven't been to jail.
No, I've never been to jail either. So,
let me tell you. I mean, I've been to jail many times to do stories, to interview people, and I got to tell you, it is the worst experience. And when I was working at CNN, they had me arrested as part of a special, and it was done like in real time. So I was driving and they pulled me over and they handcuffed me, and then they searched me and they put me in an orange outfit and they threw me behind bars. And of course I was like, I'm a vegan options only, please. But all kidding aside, it was a horrible experience. I forgot that this was for a story. I just felt so dehumanized, even for 12 hours that I experienced it. It was one of the most disturbing experiences of my life. And you've been arrested, Emmett Echo. What is it like? And I know you're still suffering from injuries. This woman ran onto the football field during the NFL season opener, I believe, to protest, to say that people should have a right to rescue animals that are suffering.
Yes, I totally agree. People should have a right to rescue anybody who needs rescuing and who are suffering. My dad is a lawyer, and I was always curious about going to the prisons with him just to experience what those people are going through, and he would never take me. He would say that even someone guilty shouldn't be in a place like that for an hour, meaning we need to change our systems rather than seeing people as criminals. We have to understand that they are going through something, either a mental breakdown or something happened in their past that pushed them to commit crimes. But in our cases, we're just depending on the laws to protect us, even though it may seem like we're doing things against the dictated laws. We still base our actions on the laws that we trust, the government that we trust, even though we see their betrayal over and over again to the animals and the planet and the humans' health and lives as well. I still trust the process, and I have a positive outlook on everything because I became an animal rights activist, and that made me love humans because animals show me that we are all animals and we all deserve to live good lives, and this shouldn't be taken away from anybody. And prison system is not a good place.
But you were in jail. You got arrested. What was the jail experience like?
It's horrible. Like the second that you're in, they make sure that you forget who you are, that you're a human being, that you have rights. They are just literally thrown out the door. You're just there when they can do whatever they want to you in that place. So far, we didn't have horrible people treating us horribly, but I've heard stories. It's just very depressing. There's no justice. I couldn't understand. Okay, they put us in here, but what is the point? Because I didn't learn anything just being locked up in there. It didn't scare me enough not to do that again because the crimes the corporations are committing continue. So I was arrested multiple times because I really want to change the laws because we have the power. We are the people. who the laws are made for, and we have the power to change these laws and challenge them. So even though it's a horrible place to be, and I was maximum there 4 days once, it's literally a horror show. I really appreciate Alicia and Alexandra risking their 6 months of life chunk, a big chunk taken from them. And I really appreciate them for even considering this and even taking it lightly. That's a total hero talk coming from them. I don't
Absolutely.
know how I could handle 6 months in a place like that.
Ellen Dent, I want you to weigh in. We've gone, we've had a lot of discussions, been very freewheeling, but the bottom line is this is a culture war in a sense. It's a legal battle, but it's a war for the hearts. I wouldn't even say war. It's a struggle for the hearts and minds of consumers, because these people on that jury, they're jurors, but they're also taxpayers who've got to be wondering about how much does this all cost when the chickens are only worth, well, what did they say? Nothing or pennies, depending on who you ask. And also they're consumers. And it's almost guaranteed that a good percentage of them eat animals.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they think about what they would do if they were put in the position of Alexandra and Alicia. If they saw these chickens on this truck and, they had the opportunity to get them off of there because it's obvious that they are in hell. When you see these trucks pull up, just from my experience, the smell is insanely atrocious. Like, they don't clean them as far as I can tell. The chickens on there, some are bleeding, some are dead, covered in their own fecal matter. And this is just from my own observance at chicken vigils. And so, if you get any opportunity to help one of these individuals, you do it. You do it. To me, you do it. And that is exactly what they did. So I hope that they are able to see that side of, taking action for compassion for the suffering of another individual over unjust laws. This is literally their opportunity to make history by seeing that these women were not trying to break the law. They were not stealing property. These chickens are not property. They shouldn't ever have been on that truck. And I hope they make the right decision.
You mentioned that chickens aren't property. I want to go to Nathan Semmel because there's a big battle in New York right now over giving animals legal rights. And it involves, in the case of New York, an elephant that Non-Human Rights Project has been trying to get what's called habeas corpus. You can explain that a little bit. They failed in the New York High Court, but now there was a big action today outside New York City Hall this morning.
Yeah, Jane, it's very exciting, actually. Unfortunately, the Non-Human Rights Project, who brought the habeas corpus case all the way to the Court of Appeals in New York, unfortunately, that was lost, although there were 2 very strong dissenting opinions. Nevertheless, the 2 elephants, Happy and Patty at the Bronx Zoo, unfortunately, would not be liberated because they are still considered things and not people under the law. But it still leaves open the possibility for legislation that could effectively help elephants and effectively force zoos like the Bronx Zoo to release Happy and Patty. And today at City Hall, Brooklyn Council Member Shahana Hanif, who introduced legislation today with the help of the Non-Human Rights Project and Voters for Animal Rights, which I'm an organizer with, that would require the Bronx Zoo to send Happy and Patty to sanctuary. And essentially what the legislation says is that that in order to keep elephants, you have to have the environment that would allow them to live their natural lives. And if you know anything about elephants, they're herd animals that require probably, at least 20 miles of square footage to live a natural life because they roam in order. That's how they behave. They roam. They need
Right.
to be right. They need to be intellectually stimulated, which they don't get at the Bronx Zoo. And the worst part of it is they've been isolated for years, which is just its own torture. So this is groundbreaking legislation that got introduced today. It's the first in the country. And I'm so happy that it already has 9 co-sponsors. So, I would recommend that everybody, follow along with the Non-Human Rights Project. Go to vfar.org and, and look for next steps that you can take to help get this legislation passed.
Okay, and what we're going to do now is kick a couple of people off. We can have a maximum of 10 people. You're coming back, but we want to allow a couple of the other people. So I'm going to give you a break. Emick, incredible job. Wow. And she still, see that sling? She was tackled after storming the football field during the NFL season opener and getting arrested. But come back in about a half an hour. We're going to add in Zara. Zara is, there you go. We're hearing, unfortunately, we can't have Zara because we're hearing feedback. But this is all part of the live experience. We will add James Madison at some point. But what I want to do is go back out to the courthouse and let's talk to Crystal. Crystal, maybe you could talk to some of the reporters who are out there waiting along with us.
Yeah. Hey, would you like to talk to the LO, Elmira Tanner? I think she's got words to say here.
Yes, absolutely.
She's
For
got
sure. We would love to talk to
We're
Elmira.
all eating cookies and cupcakes and stuff out here.
Yeah, Elmira, just for everybody who's asking, she's the lead organizer for Direct Action Everywhere. This is the organization that has branded the concept of open rescue around the country and really made headlines in the New York Times. So while Wayne Shung, the attorney, is the co-founder, Elmira is the lead organizer right now. So bring us up to date on what's happening and just the entire effort here. This is not just a trial for these folks. This is part of a major campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jane. But before I do that, just shout out to Patty Mark in Australia, who actually is really the person who started the concept of open rescue. It's something that DXC has taken, and I think we've really run with it and using it effectively in the United States. But we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and she is definitely one of those people, and really incredible woman in Australia. And yeah, what is up to date or what's going on is we are chilling outside the courthouse. It has been an hour and 20 minutes for deliberation. So I feel like that doesn't mean anything necessarily longer or shorter than, meaning more or less likely to be guilty. But I think it does mean that the jury is taking this case seriously. I think that the prosecution walked into this case thinking it was a slam dunk. The thing that is the center of this trial was caught on camera and posted online, and nobody denied that they did it. And the fact that it's, I'm just sorry, like one of the attorneys just got a text message, so now I'm like waiting for what that means.
Well, that's okay. That's breaking news. Let us know.
No, it's just a text message. It's not from the judge.
All right.
What I was saying, sorry, I was like,
yeah.
What I was saying is that, like, the prosecution probably thought this is a slam dunk. This is caught on camera. This should be a 5-minute jury deliberation. But it's obviously not. The jury's clearly looking at the issues. And so I don't think, again, that means more likely to be guilty or not guilty, but it does mean that we have sown some doubt in their mind that, rescuing animals isn't a crime. And I think that's awesome. So
I have to ask you, and if anybody has questions, please just jump in with your questions. Elmira, I don't want to jinx it, but if there is an acquittal, will this really mark a cultural shift? It's very hard to judge progress in real time. I mean, I was in the news business for, I don't even want to admit how many decades, but, at first I was the freak in the newsroom And now it's like, not so much. You've got the Beyond Meats, and you've got all of these things happening. Do you think that if there's a second acquittal in open rescue, it's going to really mark a cultural shift?
I mean, I think cultural change is slow, and this is going to be like a huge step in that direction. I don't think it's going to fundamentally change everything, and I also don't think it's going to fundamentally change everything if we lose, but I think it's definitely a data point in it. And I don't know if Crystal or anybody else mentioned it, but I think one thing that's interesting is in the prosecution's closing statement, they were like, you know what? Foster farms, like poultry farming, it's an unpleasant business, okay? Like, and he was saying that it's like,
you might not like foster
you might
farms.
not like them. You might think it's wonderful to help animals, and like, but then this is still a crime. And I think it was important to note that he basically had to tell the jury, like, you can think that these women are like right again about all of this, but you still have to convict them. And I think that's a shift, because maybe before they would have been like, this is how we get food on our table. This is how you feed your family. This is what we've always done. Chickens are objects. They don't matter. And they didn't say any of that, because I really don't think they watched the Smithfield trial, because I think they would have been a lot more prepared if they had. But as we saw in the Smithfield trial, it did not work in the prosecution's favor to compare animals to dented cans or like discarded wedding rings, or I can't remember any of the other weird analogies. But yeah, so I think it's happening. And also just in terms of the coverage that we've been getting, it's all been positive, and it's all, even if it's not positive necessarily, like it's all treating this issue seriously. It's a headline in the New York Times, opinion, like this isn't a joke. This is obviously a really important issue. It's not a joke to foster farms either. Their vice president was called to testify that, I don't know if Crystal told you, but, and maybe this is somewhat normal, but the courtroom this morning was packed. And it wasn't just packed with us. It was packed with people from the district attorney's office. Like, this is kind of like, I'm sure the case of the quarter here, with a ton of people paying attention to it and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Nathan, you had mentioned that you did a little background check, and the mayor who went into court is a former, he has, tell us. Unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was a career prosecutor in that very office before he became the mayor in 2020. So what that means, I can't say. I mean, I guess it could possibly cut both ways. My guess is he probably, the cynic in me says he's more of a supporter of the prosecution on this. But maybe he is learning things that he's not comfortable with, and maybe can help effectuate some change.
Well, also, if you look at what's been happening, I want to play, this is a protest that occurred outside the district attorney's office, the DA's office, the local DA's office. So let me play that for you, because that has got to get their attention, to put it mildly. This is just, 30 seconds of a protest that went on for a long time.
I'm going to start with the story of the time I went inside one of Foster Farms' barns. Right here. And I don't think I'd be the only person who's been in one of those barns who would say that it's one of the worst barns that they've ever seen.
One struggle, one fight.
Using freedom, animal rights.
One struggle, one fight.
Animal rights.
Animals' lives are their rights.
Getting bold.
Animals' lives are their rights.
We will not give up this fight.
Don't die, you may lie.
Animals do not want to die.
Don't die, you may lie.
Animals do not want to die.
So, we want to get a sense of what the reaction is in this town to all of that. That is, Dotsie Bouch, that's like a theater. That's like street theater, essentially.
Yeah, I hope it encourages people to watch your coverage and just pay attention to this trial. I mean, it would me if I was out there, because it just sparks an incredible amount of curiosity, right? It's so well done. It's so well orchestrated. It looks like Broadway play out there, right? Like, I mean, it's beautiful signage, and it's people with passion, and they're speaking their voice, right? And to what matters. So I bet it has. I bet there's been a lot of conversations, and after knowing what these the jurors know and what people know now because what's gone on in this trial because of your show, I just can't imagine eating chicken in Merced County again, because you know where it's coming from, Foster Farms.
Yeah, but you know, I always have to go back to realism, and I'll bring in Donnie Moss. You know, we say that, and then what we see are people, I'm always shocked, lines around the block for Chick-fil-A, which appears to be popping up everywhere. You know, we can stay in the vegan bubble and see improvements, but one of the reasons that we started Unchained TV, this global streaming network that you're watching right now, and that is free to download on your phone. Just put it on Unchained TV, or you can watch it on your TV via your Amazon Fire Stick, your Apple TV device, or your Roku device, and soon to be on all Samsung TVs. Is we have to get out of the vegan bubble, because we talk to each other and we think, yay. And then, you know, I go out of the vegan bubble and I'm like, oh my God, knocked on my heels that no, there are many people who are not getting it.
I'm not saying they're not going to eat chicken, but I am saying that after hearing this and the illnesses that these birds have, and it can make people sick, I wonder if there's some that are nervous to eat chicken in Merced County and might travel to a Chick-fil-A somewhere else, because it's been really revealing in terms of the bacteria and the illnesses that these birds have that can kill and hurt people.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can get Zara in. She's trying to get in. We're going to see if hi there, Zara.
Hi.
Hi. So yes, Zara is a personal trainer as well as someone who attends vigils, and we've been talking about the cultural impact of this trial. And are we sort of kumbaya because we're in the vegan bubble, or is the world changing? And what are your thoughts on that, given that the jury is deliberating right now?
Well, what I've experienced over the years as a vegan health coach is that people are so unaware, and I think that we can take for granted sometimes the information that we sit on, because as you say, we live in this vegan bubble. We're spending time with a lot of vegans. We're following vegan accounts. A lot of people don't do that. So to a lot of people, this is news, what's coming out now. To the jury as well, I'm sure, because we're just not aware, because they're doing such a good job of hiding what's actually going on.
Yeah, but do you think we're breaking through the vegan bubble?
We are, absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important that we just have to keep sharing everything, you know, on our social medias and speaking to people and attending these vigils and posting about it and getting the footage out there. It's definitely happening. I know myself, there's been a lot of my followers on my social media have turned more plant-based, or some are even vegan. So it's happening slowly but surely. But I think that's the good side of social media, that we are able to now spread the truth to a certain extent.
Yes, you raise a very good point. In the past, if the powers that be had not wanted this to be out there, they just say, well, we're not going to cover it on mainstream media. Nobody's going to see it. And that was even true, I would say 10 years ago, because let's say 20 years ago, I started something called Veg TV, which is similar to Unchained TV, but it was before its time, because we'd produce videos and they wouldn't stream on the technology wasn't there. So we were very handicapped. Now we can get the word out with social media, and this trial is being covered like crazy on social media. We're on our app. We're also on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. And also there are clips of the trial on YouTube provided by DXE. So the word is getting out. The question is, of course, we're going to run a race against time. Mick Davudian, we don't have a lot of time to convince 8 billion people that killing 80 billion sentient animals every year is destroying our planet.
Yes, that's true. But we don't need to convince 8 billion people. I think Wayne has spoken about this very eloquently several times. In social justice movements, there's actually a formula that's pretty well known. I can't remember what the percentage is, but there's a tipping point after which it just basically bursts open. So you don't need everyone converted or everyone knowledgeable about what's happening. But yes, you're talking about being in the vegan bubble. Sometimes we are. A lot of us try not to be. It's very difficult. It's very frustrating, honestly. I was driving home last night. As I got to our garage, I saw one of our dear neighbors walking with somebody else, and she introduced me to another neighbor whom I hadn't met before. Obviously, a very smart person. He's an environmental attorney. I had not met him in person. I had met his dog before, but we started chatting. Seems like an incredibly brilliant and very, very kind person. But literally within 5 minutes of us discussing and him talking about how he's for the environment and for animals and so on, the moment he realized he's talking to a vegan, and I brought up on-chain TV and this court case, the minute he realized the direction the conversation was headed, he proceeds to tell me, yeah, but he needs to eat meat because he has a condition where he cannot survive without meat. This, mysterious human condition that somehow appears the moment somebody talks to a vegan. And then within 5 minutes, it's like he went through the checklist, started talking about humane meat, and then the next thing was plants have feelings. So it's extremely frustrating, but we just have to put up with it and be kind to everyone and educate them, and honestly not put up with their BS. And I didn't. I said, basically, I called him out on the BS.
Well, good for you. And I know you're making a lot of friends in the neighborhood, just like me. But, just to answer that question, when people say plants have feelings, then you definitely don't want to eat meat, because the animals are eating a huge percentage of the plants produced. More than 70% of soy is fed to farmed animals. Commodity crops like corn, massive amounts. So if you're trying to save plants, you don't want to eat meat even more. Okay.
But that's precisely what I told him. I said, if you really think plants have feelings, then you're killing 6 times as many by eating meat.
Exactly. But there's a lot of these knee-jerk reactions. My favorite that you really can't answer is the blood type. No, my blood type requires me to eat meat. And, that's like saying, my sign, I'm a Libra, so I have to, it's just kind of mumbo jumbo. But, look, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Knock on wood, April 1st, I'll be 28 years sober. When I was in my disease, I had every excuse in the book. I had a bad day at work, I got to have a drink. Had a good day at work, I got to celebrate. I had to have a drink. Oh, it's raining, have to have a drink. Bad weather. Oh, it's beautiful, have to have a drink. Great weather. The list goes on and on and on. So it's the same mentality. When you're looking for rationalizations, man, you can find them. And, that's what we're dealing with. People have to, when it comes time to sobriety, you have to hit bottom. When are we going to hit bottom as a culture on meat? When you see what's going on with not just climate change, which obviously animal agriculture is a huge contributor to climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, preventable human diseases, lifestyle diseases like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, etc. The list goes on and on. Drought, water pollution. I mean, California is, I believe, the largest dairy state in the nation. And all we hear about is drought, or, until these last recent floods, but we don't know that they're going to alleviate the drought. But they never talk about the fact that these cows are polluting all this water. Cows are polluting the water and drinking the water. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension. But, when you talk to people, you see the hear no evil, see no evil blinders go on. And maybe this trial is getting people to take those blinders off. That's what we hope. Bringing you up to date, the jury is deliberating right now, and we have an incredible team. It's going to be like an open house. People are going to come in and leave because we might be here for many hours. I know, Ellen Dent, you are a mom, and you've been joining us so religiously. Thank you. Would you like to say something? Because I know you said you might have to go for a bit. Maybe you can come back tonight. We might be here at 11 o'clock. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're on at that time, I'll get back on. But I just want to point out that people wouldn't put up with having a dirty table or a dirty glass at a restaurant. Like, they would come up in arms, freak out, probably never go back to that restaurant again. So here we are hearing, how sick these chickens are, how they're literally covered in their own fecal matter. Like, I don't understand, like, if that's not hitting rock bottom on meat, realizing that literally eating these animals' bodies, you are eating fecal matter, then I don't know what is. So, I really hope that the jury will not only think about what they would do in this situation, if they were given this opportunity to rescue individuals off of these trucks, but I wish that they would think about how they would feel on those trucks and in that slaughterhouse if they were one of these individuals that were, destined to be killed.
Yes, and let's also bring in the people who have to kill these animals. And you saw the video. They have to kill 140 animals a minute. That's how fast the slaughter line moves. 100. Imagine the psychological toll that takes. Well, people are running around saying they're spiritual, compassionate, environmentalist, progressive, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think that is a really important point because, it brings up, and these are not people who get to really choose this job. It's the people on the lowest rung of the social order who often have no other choice. New immigrants, people released from prison sometimes, people who literally have very few other options, and they are traumatized. Not only did they suffer disproportionately during the COVID outbreak, but they suffer from carpal tunnel syndrome and a lot of psychological problems as a rule, Donnie Moss.
Yeah, and a part of me wonders if the employees of foster farms, many of whom or most of whom are working in the trenches in these very difficult conditions where I think, Jane, you pointed out that some of them have to wear diapers because they don't have time to go to the bathroom. I wonder what their relationship is with foster farms. They need the job. Their families need them to have these jobs. Yet they're working in the depths of hell. So is it a love-hate relationship? Is it a like-hate relationship? Are they happy that these defendants are drawing attention to the conditions at foster farms? Because maybe, just maybe, something will happen. Their own conditions will improve as a result of this. It just makes me wonder.
And I want to clarify, Oxfam issued a report saying that their investigation shows that as a rule, that slaughterhouse workers have had to wear diapers in some cases. That was a headline that Oxfam published. I don't know about the particular companies involved. So I just want to make that clear. Again, we are on verdict watch is what they call it. And it's exciting, but it's nerve-wracking. I have to say, I've been on a lot of verdict watches, and the people who can keep their cool, who are really, tightly involved, like the attorneys, the defendants themselves, the prosecutor too, the family of those who are on trial. It's a very nerve-wracking situation, and we don't know where Alexandra herself is. But Crystal, can you tell me where the defendants themselves are? Do you happen to know?
I think they're hanging out at the Airbnb nearby right now. They're just kind of waiting for the verdict to come in too. I think they're resting a little bit. They probably are exhausted from this whole week.
Oh yeah,
but they seem chill and happy and everything.
Wow, and is it a little bit of a, not a party atmosphere, but it's kind of a collegial atmosphere there?
Yeah, we're all hanging out here, having a good time.
Wow. Interesting. Yes, I think that it does change the equation when you have a lot of people who are there to support. All of this affects psychologically. I think that the prosecution may have thought they had the upper hand. This is their town. Their mayor is sitting in the courtroom, who's a former associate of the district attorney's office, reportedly, according to Nathan. But I think having all those people there supporting the defendants has got to have a psychological impact, Carla.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. As has been mentioned before, I don't think this town. I certainly the prosecution had. I don't think they had done their homework. I don't think they had any idea what they were in for with this trial. And support is everything. It really is. And I'll take that further from this to delve back into the issue of workers at these factory farms. I have done outreach. Direct Action Everywhere is passionate about making sure that we're helping everybody. And so we will often go out to factory farms and slaughterhouses just to try to talk with people, and we'll bring burritos to offer them for free. And the last time that I went out to a facility and we had burritos that we were handing out at lunchtime for free, and the security saw us. We were on public sidewalk, and they tried to shut us down. They told us that we were going to be arrested. They told us that we had no right to be handing out this food that had not been priorly, they said that we had to go through the facility and get approval to be able to hand the food out. And we said, we're on a public sidewalk. The workers are on their lunch break. And those that did come up to us, very kind, always very nice. And a few of them spoke with us. And from all the times that I've spoken with workers, way more often than not, they are not happy. They know that they're being taken advantage of. They know that the conditions that they're in are horrible, but they feel that they don't have any choice. And I get so upset when I see these corporations throwing these people under the bus, so to speak. Whenever there's an issue, like the footage that we saw that was taken inside the slaughterhouse just earlier, those workers, I fear, will get blamed for, they're not doing their job the way that we trained them. And then the worker gets fired, when we all know that what's happening is what they're teaching them to do, what they have to do in order to be able to hang those birds that quickly. Like you said, it's traumatic. It's absolutely traumatic. And as we all know, human beings just can't deal with that level of trauma. And that's where you get such cognitive dissonance to be able to, sometimes you have to make those beings not actually living sentient beings. Otherwise, how could you continue to do that? So the corporations vilify the workers, and that's just not right. And I think that we have to keep pushing this forward until, we talked about being in a bubble. And I completely agree with the fact that I think that we sometimes can get ourselves into a little bit of a bubble. When we're out there doing protests, we get a lot of vitriol. You may have footage of the security guard that came after Taj, one of our protesters, inside of a Rally's supermarket nearby, where we had just a quick protest. A lot of people in that supermarket were not happy that we were there, but oftentimes we get one or two people that will give us a wink and a nod because they understand. And I think that we are chipping away. We're chipping away at the cognitive dissonance. We're chipping away at the corporate lies. And so it's really important. So grateful again for you, Jane, to cover this, and for everybody who writes op-eds. It's really important that we're out there writing op-eds. Crystal can speak to that we're getting a lot of those in newspapers all over the place. And the more that we speak up, the more that we stand up and tell people what's going on, it is going to make a difference. And we are going to eventually win this right to rescue.
Yeah. And that was another thing. We found out that there's a chicken industry closed this week. Tyson Foods announced plans to lay off 1,700 workers. And they said in the latest quarter, the meat giant said its chicken business underperformed expectations. And that's not the company associated with this case. The company associated with this case is Foster Farms. However, it is interesting. What's so fascinating about that article, they had to bring Beyond Meat in and say, Beyond Meat, if you read the article, it's also having issues and had to. I was like, it's interesting how they have to bring in Beyond Meat of all the companies. The media has declared war on plant-based meats. they've declared war page. You can speak to this on, well, these vegan burgers are processed. You know, if you put a banana and a mango in a blender, it's processed. It doesn't mean that everything that's processed is equal. Do they ever mention that processed meat is officially cancer causing according to the World Health Organization? No, it's selective indignation page, and you can address that.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm just going to bring something up. There was a news article that came out, and so a news blip, and it was on one of the late night shows that one of the Beyond Meat executives bit the nose of somebody this is news, at a football game. So I did a little research. Well, guess what? That executive was a former executive, one of these large meat packing industries.
Tyson Foods.
There you go. So they didn't mention that. Instead, they focused on that there was a Beyond Meat executive. I'm sorry. That to me feels like a purposeful slamming and slaying against the Beyond Meat and Beyond Meat industry. I want to bring something up because it's been sitting with me about this, the crowd in the courtroom, so to speak, that there's a buildup. Here's my question for you, Nathan. Nathan, have you seen, so here, I think, I've been grappling with this. Two things about it. One, more people in, is that because they've heard word of mouth that there might be some changes in the town? Could this put public pressure that they want to, how do I even say this? You know, put public pressure on the jury by having your townspeople in the courtroom, you know, maybe looking down and saying like, you know, you better do the right thing. You know, what are your thoughts on that, Nathan?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I don't know who the people are who were there. I mean, you know, for all we know, they could be, I heard something about there being more prosecutors there. So, you know, they're just going as watch colleagues. But if there are people from the city, I think it does sort of telegraph to the jury that this case is important. And it may not be as simple as what the prosecution is presenting to you, that this is just some, you know, petty theft case. So I hope that it is members of the community that are there watching this case. You know, I guess it could also be, you know, people who are employed by Foster Farms, but I doubt it. So it could be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could sit here analyzing the tea leaves all day long. One of the reasons why jury deliberations, which are going on right now, are so nerve-wracking is that it's all 100% pure speculation. You do not know what these jurors are thinking right now. And I've covered trials where you know, reporters sit around, and reporters always want to be the smartest one, and they'll say, "Oh no, I can tell this one's super angry at the defendant, and oh, that one was scowling." And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had like this, and then they come out and they do the exact opposite. I'll never forget an experience I had. I was a reporter covering the Michael Jackson case, and it went from being one set of charges to a conspiracy case, an 18-count conspiracy case. And I turned to the reporter behind me. I said, "You think that's a bad thing?" And she looked at me like I was a complete moron. She said, "Yes, of course it's a bad thing." Well, guess what? That was really what was the key to the acquittal. It was such a convoluted conspiracy case that involved so many moving parts, and parts of it were really hard to even wrap your mind around. That was the key to the acquittal. And so, you know, people say they're the experts or they know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what this jury is going to do. You can look at their faces and think, well, they're supportive. No, they're hostile. But really, it's like getting your palm read. Honestly, who knows? So I want to bring in Lindsay Baker, who is with Unchained TV and has her own show on Unchained TV, has been following this case. Lindsay, you've been following it. What is your takeaway? What do you think the big message for our culture is?
Well, I think the good news is, regardless of how the case goes, whether these two wonderful activists are sent to jail for 6 months, which is absurd, or if they're acquitted, the main message is getting out there and it is touching everyone. I was at my chiropractor's office and he had seen, I think it was on TMZ, I believe, he had seen a blurb about it. The interesting thing is the hook on this story, when people hear two people getting arrested for stealing chickens, chickens have always been thought of as a humorous kind of the butt of humor, unfortunately, in our society. So the first impression I've gotten from people is they kind of smirk or laugh. But as everyone on the panel has been saying, this case is so significant and it goes beyond even the humanity of saving these chickens to a whole larger issue where it's been discovered that the animals are so diseased, they are a harm to humans. So even if you have no compassion for animals, you have to understand that this is dangerous. And it appears that these animal agriculture companies will stop at nothing for profit. So that's sort of where you guys have been doing an amazing job. I've been watching every single minute I can. And I just want to thank you all so much for what you've been
Thank you for joining us. And, you know, we are now in, it's 3:21. So it started 1:30, 2:30. We're almost 2 hours in. I think we should hit the restart button and really bring everybody who may be joining us up to date on essentially what this case is all about, because it's not just about two chickens, but that's important. Those two chickens had their lives to live, and one of them is living, but it's about the bigger issue of how animals are treated in our culture and how our society should behave towards animals, including chickens.
Hi, Unchained. It's Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here and covering the trial. We really appreciate it.
Young chickens are fattened up in filthy conditions before they're loaded on a truck and transported for slaughter.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors. And we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
So again, the jury is deliberating almost 2 hours now. We've got the amazing Crystal Heath outside court, and she's going to bring us the very latest. We're going to unmute you and find out what's going on. And tell us also about yourself, because you're no just ordinary court reporter. You're a veterinarian in your own right, and you are the founder of Our Honor, which is an incredible organization that tries to help veterinarians who love animals not get sucked up into the animal agriculture system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been so vital during these trials to have people like Sherston testify. She made the Utah trial. Like, that's what, led to the acquittal ultimately. So we need more veterinarians like that to be able to testify against the industry, because there's all these industry vets who are willing to come to these trials and testify against the defendants, against the interests of the animals. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to inspire more vets to become advocates for animals and work for the best interests of all species. But in vet school, we're often indoctrinated into this animal agriculture propaganda, and we're normalized to violence against animals, and it's really sad. And often, vegans and animal rights.
What is that person doing back there? There's somebody banging something.
I hear that too. It's not from out here. I think it's somebody else's mic, honestly.
All right. Whoever's doing that, if you're, flamenco dancing somewhere, please cease and desist. Okay. Continue on.
So, yeah, I mean, we need more veterinarians, but there's so many other ways people can help the animal rights movement professionally. Imagine if we had more animal control officers. I also work at a shelter, and we often do forensic investigations of animal cruelty cases that are mostly dogs and cats. But I had an animal control officer, come to me and, she's like, "Can you tell me if this is a rooster?" And I'm like, "Well, why? Why does it matter?" And she's like, "Well, they're not allowed to have backyard roosters." And I'm like, "Well, you have this factory farm down the street that has many roosters. Why is that legal and somebody can't have a rooster in their backyard? That doesn't make any sense." And then, talking about, well, can you go into these factory farms as an animal control officer and cite these companies for criminal animal cruelty? And it's a little bit tough. They're like, "Well, we don't have jurisdiction. It's a little bit weird." That's something that we need to look at, and animal control officers need to help us with that. But, getting more people who are activists to become USDA inspectors too, that would be great. Like, let's really professionalize this. And anybody who's maybe thinking about participating in some sort of open rescue thing, I am not advocating for anybody to break the law. It's a highly, dangerous, very risky thing to do. And right now with avian influenza and African swine fever, biosecurity protocols have to be really a lot tighter. And the industry is changing now. They're changing what they're doing as far as biosecurity. So activists need to be aware of what is the best biosecurity practices and protocols to do. And if you ever find an animal who is the victim of criminal animal cruelty, they should go to a vet right away, and that should be documented thoroughly. And that animal clearly identified, ideally with some sort of permanent indicator of who they are, a permanent identification. And you need to ask the vet to record this exam as if it is a criminal case, a cruelty case. There needs to be photos, x-rays, blood work. You need to submit diagnostics for all of these viruses. You need to get a feces sample, and that needs to be thoroughly documented and recorded. So I hope that's something really important that I want to stress to anybody who's dealing with an animal who's a victim of animal cruelty.
You're making extremely good points. People think, "Oh yeah, these two women, they just ran up." And no, this is a very, serious and also detailed issue. And I do want to play this again. Let's show a little bit of the video at the heart of this case, and then we're going to show the breakdown of what was really going on.
Why are you running on this video?
Well, I'm running because I didn't want the truck to move. I didn't really know what was going on at the slaughterhouse gate, so I didn't want the truck to move because there were chickens on there that might need help. And secondly, I didn't want to be stopped by anybody from Foster Farms so that I couldn't help a chicken.
Were you running to avoid the authorities?
I didn't see any authorities there. So no, I was not running to avoid the authorities.
I'm going to keep playing. People don't want it. What did you see when you ran up behind, the rig of the truck, or I guess it's the front of the rig? What did you see in the cages when you ran up behind the truck?
I saw many, many chickens. I smelled, that was what I first, was the smell. That it was like Alicia said it was sort of an undescribable smell. I think of ammonia, just a really strong smell of ammonia, of feces. And there were lots of chickens crammed into very small cages.
And what did you observe in the particular chicken that you removed from the truck?
So Alicia opened the cage and Jax was right there. And he did not move away from me when the cage was opened, even though here I was, a human looming over him. other chickens moved away. It was my first hint that he wasn't well, because the instinct of a chicken would be to move away. And he had a very pink comb. Chickens are, and Alicia explained about a comb, they're supposed to be red, deep red, and his was pink. He also had feces on his belly, which indicated that he'd probably been sitting in his feces for a while, which no mammal likes, no creature, I think, likes to do that.
So here's the thing. It is said by attorneys sometimes that, jurors need something to hang their hat on. And so is that testimony enough for them to hang their hat on? No, this wasn't a theft. Obviously, Alexandra Paul, famous from Baywatch, does not need to steal a chicken. Okay, that's another factor here. I mean, it's like people generally steal something to acquire it, to have it. These animals went immediately for veterinary care, and the one surviving chicken is in a sanctuary. Is that explanation enough for the jurors to hang their hat on? Let's go start with Mick and do a round robin.
Well, it's kind of complicated in my own mind right now, because there are things that are worrisome. Like I believe Wayne talked about value. I think that comes into play. And the unfortunate thing, from what I understood Wayne's explanation to be, is the court instructions, the jury instructions rather, were very clear that the chickens could be valued anything, any value, I guess even 1 cent. And in that case, I guess there's value, therefore it could be theft. I'm not sure how that plays into the mind of the jurors, whether or not they're found guilty. But I think it is important to take the whole thing overall. I mean, I was able to view some of the videos of the proceedings in court. For example, the rebuttal witness that Foster Farms brought, their VP of operational and strategic accounting, it seemed like he was almost thrown to the wolves. This was a guy who's been on the job for about 3 months, although he has, if you look at his resume on LinkedIn, you'll see he was with other factory farms, including Tyson, for 13 years. But he was completely caught off guard on the stand. And Wayne's cross was incredible. I mean, Wayne basically asked him, are you aware that on your own website, in this case, Foster Farms, of course, you are advertising that your animals are free from pain and suffering, etc. And he said, no, I don't. Basically, he said, no, that's not on our site. And he gave him a printout. He said, no, I don't think I'm familiar with this. Not sure basically where you're getting it from. And then he asked the judge if he could approach the witness. And he literally brought his laptop over and showed him the website. On their website, they claim to the public that the animals don't suffer, they are healthy, they're not in pain, and he was forced to admit on the spot. And there was another point where this VP was forced to backtrack about getting advice from an attorney. So I think it was very powerful, and I think those things put together, I'm pretty optimistic.
Okay, let me play an opening segment of that vice president. And again, we invite Foster Farms on any time. We would love to dialogue with them. And then we'll discuss.
What is Foster Farms' business?
We're in the business of processing chicken and turkeys for food for the United States.
Does Foster Farm use the full chicken for food and products?
Yes.
What processes does Foster Farm use to derive food and products from your chickens?
Well, there's the typical production process for the meat for human consumption, and then we have a supplemental rendering process for all other products.
What is rendering?
Rendering is effectively taking the components of the production process that have no use and you derive a useful material from them.
What are some of these materials that are derived from the process?
It's primarily meat meal, fat, and feta meal.
While he was talking, because I've heard that, I just went to my freezer and I've been thinking about doing this for a while. Okay, these are chicken wings. They just don't come from an animal. There are many different products that are identical in terms of being plant-based chicken. I grabbed this one at random because I wanted to get back. But I think that if this discussion were occurring 100 years ago and people say, well, I want to have my chicken, it's one thing. But now there are dozens of these products, dozens. And in taste tests, in many cases, and I'm not advertising for any particular plant-based chicken, they have done taste tests where they can't tell the difference. The people eating them cannot tell the difference. What is that, Carla? You're getting me hungry now.
I know. So I just prepared this right before we started. You can see I haven't been able to get through all of it, but it's made with, that's vegan chicken right there, and vegan cheese, and lots of wonderful lettuce on a beautiful olive bread sandwich right here, all vegan. There's just, those excuses don't hold up anymore. And we can talk about food deserts and we can talk about food insecurity. But when it comes down to it, we know that those don't hold up. If you keep going down those arguments, they just don't hold up anymore. And, you can go to any supermarket and find products, that are vegan, that are plant-based, I should say. I don't want to go down this, but plant-based and vegan, two very different things. But there's so many wonderful, as you're just saying, Jane, so many wonderful plant-based options now that it's just not an excuse anymore to be able to say like, oh, it's too difficult, I can't find anything. I mean, there's this gigantic vegan section of the supermarket that's always been there. I don't know if people have heard about the produce aisle, but people might want to visit that every once in a while as well.
The reason I bring it up is that the underlying argument of all of this is, and I think it came up in this trial, that protein is being provided. In fact, let me go back to the Foster Farm statement here, is that, and I've heard this argument from many, many people many times in different circumstances regarding the consumption or use of animals, but it's right here. They talk about, through its actions, Direct Action Everywhere has proven itself to be an extremist organization with a self-proclaimed goal of discouraging consumers from eating any meat, poultry, fish, or dairy. Yes. I mean, it's not necessary, and it's leading us to a climate crisis, and it's causing habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, preventable human diseases. There's no cholesterol in these products. You can look, cholesterol, 0, 0, 0. So cholesterol is associated with heart disease, which is America's leading killer. I mean, that is the underlying argument as well. And maybe all of you can address that while I put this back in the freezer, because I don't want it to go bad. Not that it would, because it's plant-based. Zara, unmute, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I think that was my cat trying to get into the kitchen cupboard, so I'm sorry about that. And they're actually going crazy, so I'm going to come off here after this. I just want to say, because it's the first time I saw that clip on what we just watched now, and it's just incredible how much they're trying to remove any names that are reminding of slaughter or anything that it's a sentient being that we're dealing with. They're talking about removing material. You would never say that about a human being or a cat or a dog. So it's just crazy. The speciesism is just insane. And And I also just wanted to say that regardless of the outcome of this, I really do hope that the jury and the people that are watching this trial are getting more of a bigger picture of this. It's not just about these 2 chickens, but it's about all the other chickens that were on that truck. And it's about all the trucks that came before and now coming after. You know, this is such a huge scale that I think people can't really grasp what's actually going on. And I think Ellen made a really good point. We don't want to sit down in a restaurant and eat at a dirty plate, but we're very happy to have this dirty meat on our plate. So there is so much to think about here. And I think there is so many points that if the jury has paid attention and everyone watching this trial, it's going to have you really think about if you want to continue to consume the way we are consuming now.
Yes, and that's why it's so absolutely important that the rest of society watch this, and why it's frustrating that, yes, DXC, by the way, brilliant at getting coverage from organizations that are hell-bent on not covering them. You know, here's the New York Times. This is an op-ed, okay? It's a very positive op-ed, but it's still an op-ed. The New York Times, I don't see a New York Times reporter covering this. I think it's the most important case happening in America right now. And I certainly hope that they make up for it by publishing a story when the verdict comes in, whatever that verdict is. But as I've said many times before, it shouldn't take people having to risk going to prison to get an important story out there. And there is what Lindsay Baker said, this prejudice. Even my own sister, when she said, who's not vegan, but she's, you know, she hears me all the time, but she's not a big meat eater, but she's not vegan, and she's the first to say it. She said, I watched your coverage. There was a little laughter about the chicken. You know, in other words, I'm not saying that to indict her, but what I'm saying is the average person out there, when they hear the word chicken, they just laugh, like they diminish it. Just like I'm sure all of you have experienced, which I certainly have, the condescension of people who find out you're an animal rights activist and they say, oh, I had a pet too. And I love the fact that you love, you know, that almost like you're childish, like you're not fully developed. There's this, I mean, can anybody address that, Donnie Moss? Because honestly, we are offering the solution to 90% of the world's problems. Climate change is the biggest existential threat of our lifetimes. And now even the United Nations is reporting there were stories in the last couple of weeks where they said, you know, we are not going to meet our climate goals without a massive reduction in meat consumption globally. And yet they're not making that connection, Donnie. This is about more than 2 people taking a chicken. This is about the future of our planet.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments in time, Jane, when, you know, the fires in the Amazon and the fires in Australia a few years ago, where, you know, in the Amazon in particular, so much of the rainforest was being leveled to make way for cattle grazing and to grow soy to feed those cattle. And so just for a moment in time, I felt like the world was almost frantic. The same could be said of the fires in Australia and the drought in California several years ago, and when almonds and avocados were blamed instead of the massive dairy farms. And so, you know, sometimes I wonder, is it going to take something much more catastrophic than what has already happened to really move the needle, to get us to the point where people say, okay, we really have to take this seriously now? Is that going to be the avian flu pandemic, which even the New York Times has reported that if it becomes transmissible from human to human, it would be far more lethal than COVID? You know, could that be the tipping point? It's really hard to know, because people are thinking about themselves and they're thinking about the short term. Because if they weren't, we would all be leading much more different lives.
You have a situation where Point Reyes National Seashore, the dairy farms are polluting the water. The dairy farms are, you know, not what the tourists come to see. They come to see the beautiful beach, swim in the beach, and they come to see the Thule elk. And the Thule elk are being starved of water and are dying because the agencies that should be protecting them are siding with the dairy industry and letting them starve. And then people go in at night with buckets of water and they risk getting arrested to give water to the Tule elk, which is bringing millions of dollars of tourism. So you have an agency of government that is working contrary to the interests of the people. And we see this constantly. I mean, in this case, during the time that we've had this case, that we've been discussing this for the last 8 days, I want to go to this article. Okay. The USDA has just announced they're going to give $43 million to encourage and expand poultry processing, which is at the heart of this case. Shame on our government. Right now, the Supreme Court is getting ready to issue a ruling on the proposition passed here in California that says California, which is about to become the fourth most powerful, fourth biggest economy in the world, will not allow the sale of products that come from cruel production methods like pig gestation crates, which I will show you right now. We have video of pig gestation crates that were shot by DXE. Okay? This Californians have said should be illegal, and we will not sell any pig products, pork, ham, bacon, that come from these horrific conditions. And the Biden administration is siding with the Pork Council and the pork industry. And we don't know. Meanwhile, DXC had to go to trial for rescuing 2 piglets from that farm and showing the conditions of what is going on inside those farms. I mean, this is an upside down world, and it's a bipartisan problem. It's not one administration or the other. They are all lousy on this subject. And, you know, you have people like Cory Booker, the U.S. Senator from New Jersey, that is vegan, who gets it. And, but he's one senator. I mean, this trial is nothing to snicker at about chickens. It's the future of our planet. It's that important. And I think we should do a round robin. And what do people think about this? Mick.
Well, Jane, there's a concept known as psychic numbing. You probably are familiar. Many are familiar with it. Basically, as numbers of victims or the suffering, if it's an individual, it's very easy for another individual to empathize with. We can see a chicken or a small baby suffering, or even an adult, a human being suffering, and it's very easy to connect with their suffering and realize that they are us. The minute the numbers get higher, I think it's even if it's 2, literally our empathy drops. But when it's a mass situation of mass suffering, humans have this ability to basically stop feeling. And it's perhaps, I think it's understood to be a way for us to protect ourselves. Just like I close my eyes when you're showing the pigs in the gestation crates, because it's extremely painful. It brings me back to a few years ago when I was outside of the Circle 4 farms in Utah. And earlier you were talking about showing the video of the DXC showing the 3D camera footage. The mother pigs screaming, I've seen much worse. I've been inside the slaughterhouse. Those images are really hard to forget. But honestly, the thing that sticks with me and traumatizes me to this day is the screams of the mother pigs. So unless you see this, unless you hear it, unless you smell the stench, it's really hard for the average person. Even with social media, behind a computer, they watch these scenes and they close their eyes. Oh my God, this is horrific. But then they go out and buy the meat. They cannot empathize. And this is where what these industries are counting on. They know these realities. They know that psychic numbing is a real thing in human nature. And they're taking advantage of that. And along with humane washing and all the other schemes that they have going, it's really the public that's duped. So the public is just as much a pawn in this game as the animals are.
Well, yes, as Dr. Silas Rao has said, and on Unchained TV, there's an entire documentary about Silas Rao that we did that has won numerous awards called Countdown to Year Zero. He says very brilliantly, we're all being factory farmed. It's not just the animals. They need people to get sick so they can sell them the pharmaceuticals. It's the entire system. And yet it's also the solution to the biggest problems we face. So you have the US government saying they want to fight the climate crisis, and they keep talking about cars. It's been established conclusively for years that animal agriculture is a bigger contributor to climate change than all transportation combined. And yet you don't hear anybody talking about it. And then you hear about the administration giving millions and millions of dollars to encourage not only slaughterhouses, but poultry slaughterhouses. I mean, we're living in an upside down world. And, it's our own arrogance as a species that says we can't go extinct. No, we can go extinct. If it becomes too hot to support human life, if the weather becomes too extreme to have food to feed people, because at a certain point, and this was not a vegan who told me this, we had a one of the world's top water experts. He said, one day you're going to have to choose. Do you want a hamburger or do you want a glass of water? And somebody else said, when the temperatures hit a certain level, what happens is massive crop failure. And how is that going to manifest? You're going to go into the supermarket. You're not going to see any food. I immediately ran out and bought a huge amount of popcorn. And I said, well, I'll have popcorn. If all else fails, I'll have my popcorn. But, the point is that we're getting to the crisis point. And I want to bring something else up. Getting back to the fact that we're deliberating about this trial. I don't want to lose track of that. This is the Foster Farms rescue trial. Alicia Santurio and Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul are on trial. They took 2 chickens. This one survived. His name is Jax. They could go to jail. And the New York Times has reported on this case saying rescuing farm animals from cruelty should be legal. So let's get back to the case, because we've gotten a little far off. We are doing verdict watch here. We've got some very, very powerful people who are going to sit with us through the duration. There's the attorney, the defense attorney, Wayne Shung, surrounded by the 2 defendants, Alicia in the red and Alexandra Paul in the white. And let's hear from Alexandra, who talked about why she decided to do this.
Chaos of the high slaughter speeds that workers are pressured to meet. Living birds sometimes get mistaken for dead ones and are thrown in the trash alive. I knew that this cruel fate was waiting for birds on that slaughter truck. I knew the conditions that they were raised in by Foster Farms left many of them injured, infected, and disabled. DXE had tried reporting these criminal conditions to the authorities, but we were ignored.
That is the defense. The defense is they're saying, well, the prosecution ignored our reports of laws being broken, according to them, denied by Foster Farms, but they're saying laws being broken. And so we had no other option but to take this action. So I want to go, our attorney, Nathan Semmel, has rejoined us, and I want to go back to him and ask, there are laws in California that say you can't torture animals. There are no exceptions, my understanding is, for farmed animals. So what explanation does the DA, none, for not prosecuting? I personally wrote to the DA of Merced County and said, hey, we're going to be doing this live. I'd like to get your statement. Why didn't you prosecute? Never heard back.
Yeah, Jane, I mean, ironically, California has probably the strictest animal cruelty laws in the country. And they're unlike other states that make exceptions for animal agriculture and sadly animal testing. California has no exception. You've shown video to your audience, undercover video, and, you've seen the high-speed slaughter line, and you've seen chickens flailing on the ground. Every single second of that video is a crime in California. Every single second of it. And somehow nothing is done. There's no prosecution of the corporation. I mean, none of us here are surprised because we know where they get, we know the money they put into the political system. But those laws are there for a reason, and they're not really intended for prosecuting, people who are compassionate, who are looking to do nothing more than rescue animals. And I don't say that as, as the attorney or as an animal rights activist. I mean, common sense tells you, just take Alexandra, right? I mean, she is a actress. She's well known. She is not doing this for what the DA called a stunt. She doesn't need that kind of, she's not looking for publicity, right? I mean, in order to prove theft, you have to prove that you're intending to deprive another person or a corporation of property. You're looking to benefit yourself. There's none of that here, right? I mean, this is clearly a selfless act of rescue. I think, we heard that the mayor has been in the courtroom the last few days. I know that people of DXE has written to the mayor, has written to the DA, and nothing has been done. You were just talking about, we were talking about things that it can be a little discouraging that we're not seeing the change at the pace that we would like to see it. One of the other things, and something that I try to get involved in, is getting involved in the political process, whether it's grassroots organizing, or even running for local office, getting involved on boards, on your local boards. That's how you can also help effectuate change. And you hope that when the mayor is sitting there watching this, maybe he's a little uncomfortable with some of the things that he's seen, and you hope that maybe the real offenders will one day be brought to justice.
So I'm going to open it up right now, Nathan, from your mouth to God's ear, that that people change and they will see things in a way that we want them to see. I always say, just not talking politics, but just in general, like a cultural issue, is that conservatives are never quite as conservative sometimes as you anticipate, and liberals are never quite as liberal as you anticipate. Progressives sometimes have areas where they're not progressive at all. Like, people are people. And I'm going to allow right now Crystal to talk a little bit.
Hey, Jessica.
What's going on? And please talk for about 2 minutes. I must walk my dog. She's letting me know.
2 minutes. We're here with Jessica, who is part of the legal team, and she's a University of Chicago law student. Unlike vet school, it is a boon to her career to work for DXE. Unlike vet students, who you have to hide that fact. But yeah, here's Jessica to talk about her experience. She's in the courtroom, with the legal team. She got to go behind the scenes, right, to behind closed
for all
doors
of the
with the judge.
sidebars.
Yeah, tell us about those.
I think that there was nothing happening in those. I think that probably everyone could hear what was happening during those anyway.
We could not.
Oh no!
We couldn't hear what was going on when you were up with the judge, and we couldn't hear when you.
Oh yeah, when we went out in the hallway.
So.
Yeah, it was all the same objections that happened in the courtroom basically being fought out. But I think that today the main objection that has relevance is, I don't know if you caught that during his closing statement, Travis Colby, he introduced a new theory that he was alleging when he said, look at these handles coming out of the backpack, look right
Those
here,
are
she brought burglary tools or whatever. And, that's fine. I'm fine with him alleging that those are burglary tools, but we should have the chance to put Alexandra back on the stand then and then talk about how those are rescue tools, not burglary tools. So it's completely unconstitutional that he, during his closing statement, just brought up new facts, because it's supposed to be only things that were already in evidence. So I think that, Wayne was pretty upset about that, but, oh, well, I don't know how prejudicial it really was. It may have been, but I think that, our two closing statements were good enough that the jury will be able to come to the right decision.
Yeah, and you also brought up like Foster Farms has USDA inspectors. It's like, why didn't you call one as a witness then?
Yeah, well, and I was thinking like during Kirsten's testimony, she made so many great points, but I wish that she had gotten the chance to make the point that like, well, like we are sort of trying to change the laws. That's what she was doing in her like legislative hearing, but mostly we're just trying to get the laws that are currently on the books enforced. And that's what Alicia and Alexandra were trying to do the entire time that they were contacting the authorities. You know, like there are so many laws on the books to protect animals that just, you know, like a law doesn't exist if it's not enforced by anyone. Yeah, are we still live?
I don't know. Are we still live, Jane?
We are. Jane said she had
Yeah.
to run and walk her dog. I
Walk
think.
her dog. Oh,
I
we're
will
supposed to talk
also,
more.
I can bring up the fact that I remember Atwell in the beginning brought up brought up the nuclear protesters and how their necessity to defense didn't fly because they didn't go through all the steps needed before they ended up doing that. And he even brought up they should have sought to change the law. And it's like, or it sought to get better enforcements for the law. It's like, you're literally the DA. That's your job. It's not
right.
Like, and also Direct Action Everywhere is doing that. We're trying to help legislation and get legislation.
Well, I'm back. I think it was a fascinating conversation because I know who's involved. Yeah, what's going on? A lot of times these jurors will take a break. They've been deliberating. They started at 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, so 2.5 hours. It's now 4 o'clock. Do we have any word that the court is going to stay open late? Because the courthouse generally closes around 6. I would say. So I'm wondering, this is now going on 2.5 hours. Where is this going? Nathan Semmel, assistant district attorney, former assistant district attorney. Where are we?
I mean, it's still relatively early, to be honest with you. The only thing I'm a little surprised at is at this point, usually they'll send out a note with some sort of a question regarding either the law or some clarification on the law, or they want to hear testimony or see an exhibit, but nothing. I mean, listen, I think it's a good thing. I think it's that they're taking it seriously. Remember, the prosecution wanted to reduce this to the simplest of denominators. That you saw it yourself, ladies and gentlemen. You saw these two people approach a Foster Farms truck on their property and took 2 birds. Case closed. That if you accept that premise, well, there should be a conviction in about 8 minutes.
Yes.
2.5 hours in, right? So there have to be people who have opened their mind to this not being. I mean, I'm speculating, but I have to believe there are people whose minds have been open to the fact that this is not so cut and dry. So, I think it's okay for it to go on some time.
Wow. And you just raised a very, very good point. Is it normally, if it goes on a long time, it means that this is not just an open and shut, oh, they took the chickens, that's theft, we can all go home. They are having in-depth conversations. Let's do a round robin because I think that's absolutely the case. Carla.
Well, I'm glad you came to me because I did have one thing. Nathan, I'm not sure. It's my understanding that they were not on Foster Farms property yet. This was outside of the property. They were on public grounds. The car was driving along and was nearby. The truck, I believe, was outside of the slaughterhouse and on public grounds. So I don't think the issue is that they took the Jackson Ethan from Foster Farms property so much as this being a case of whether Jackson Ethan are to be considered property worth some value, right? It's any value, no matter how slight. And I think that with Kirsten Rosenberg, Dr. Rosenberg's testimony, with the diseases that were proven to be in Ethan, and the fact that Jax to this day is in quarantine because he could still transmit the disease that he has to other chickens, in the area. It's very serious. And I think that the fact that the prosecutors were trying to get Shane, the VP there, to state that no matter what condition Jax and Ethan were in, they were worth some value. And I think that that's something that the jury probably has on their minds, is the idea that these beings that were so ill would then still be used in any fashion for any other living being to consume is terrifying. And I think that that is something that they're probably thinking about right now.
Yeah, but let me say this. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it happened in inside the factory or the truck. It's considered the property of Foster Farms, hypothetically. I just want to clarify that, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, the theft allegation is of the chickens themselves, and I don't think that's in dispute. In order to prove the theft, that this is a crime, the prosecution has to prove several elements beyond a reasonable doubt. One of them is that the chickens didn't belong to Alexandra and Alicia. They belonged to Foster Farms. And I don't think that was in dispute. I completely agree with Carla regarding the value issue. That is another element that the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge has instructed them that, kind of gave them a loose definition on value. It seems like didn't quite commit to market value, didn't quite commit to, just intrinsic value either. So, Dr. Rosenberg's testimony is crucial to the extent that, well, for many reasons, but on the issue of value, that because of the condition, they had absolutely no value to Foster Farms.
Let me play what Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg said. By the way, we have a global audience. Somebody was watching from France, and now we have somebody saying love and support from Morocco, which is really nice to see that we have a global audience. This is a global issue. Let me, as we wait for the jury that is deliberating, let me play the veterinarian, Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg, for the defense expert testimony on just how sick these two birds were. And it's very alarming.
They were infected with an extremely contagious coronavirus called infectious bronchitis virus. It's a very, up to, or not up to, 100% of birds that are exposed will get sick. Very contagious virus. They also were infected with 2 bacteria that can make human beings sick.
And what were those 2 bacteria?
Enterococcus faecium and E. coli.
I think you previously testified that enterococcus infections in hospital lead to up to 66.7% of patients dying, correct?
Correct.
Are there a large number of people nationwide who die of enterococcus infections?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the most common infections. One of the most common nosocomial infections that we have today, and it's actually increasing.
What is nosocomial?
Nosocomial infections are infections that come from hospitals. So you go into the hospital to get maybe a knee surgery or something like that, and you end up inadvertently contracting Enterococcus faecium. And literally studies have been done where these organisms in hospitals have been traced back to chickens in grocery stores. And if you do get unlucky enough to get one of these infections in the hospital, these are multi-drug resistant bacteria. So the antibiotics that the doctors want to use on you, they don't work. Maybe you get lucky and they do, but up to 66.7% of people will die.
I mean, that's very alarming. I just have to do a round robin on that. Like, I feel like there should be massive media coverage of that. And crickets crickets on that I can see. Lindsay Baker.
Yeah, I was just, it's astounding what she's saying and terrorizing. I'm terrifying. I'm thinking about it and I'm saying to myself, oh my gosh, I hope I never have to go to the hospital. How could we allow this to go on where it goes so far beyond rescuing animals and even animal agriculture to where our health is being threatened? And it's like that movie, Don't Look Up. No one's looking up. And it's incredible. I just hope that, and I am sure that this case and others like it is really so important. And I'm sure that it's going to shed a light on a lot of this, particularly hoping to get the mainstream media to cover it more.
I don't know. I mean, you would think that would be a headline somewhere, you know. Let's go to Donnie Moss on that.
You know, if I'm on that jury and I'm hearing Dr. Rosenberg describe the illness that these chickens have, and again, after having listened to the defendants describe and the truck driver, who was the prosecution's witness, describe the conditions on the truck, I'm saying to myself, is the USDA asleep at the wheel? Who's protecting us? Are the two defendants, Alicia and Alexandra, are they doing the job of the USDA by exposing this stuff? So this is one of the ways in which we know that this is much bigger than the petty theft that they went into the trial thinking it is.
Yeah. And by the way, we also have somebody watching from Japan and somebody watching from Quebec, Canada, Morocco, and France. Wow. That really warms my heart. We're getting out there. Yeah, I mean, I almost think that it's worth like a DXC news release just to focus on that. That is breaking news. And you would think that would be something that would get some coverage. And I want to go back out, if I may, to Crystal. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Crystal? Yeah, I want to ask your attorney who's there if she can comment on what was the prosecution's reaction to Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg's testimony that these animals, the two rescued birds, were extremely sick with a coronavirus. I understand there's many different types of coronaviruses. So we're not saying COVID-19, but she said a coronavirus that's contagious. What did the prosecution say? Was that just sat there like a lead balloon? Somehow I can't hear you. It's muted or you've lost your sound. You've lost your sound somehow. You know what? Jump out and come back. And then why don't I get the reaction from others? Carla Cabral, you were nodding your head. Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump in, just speaking about everybody who's watching from different areas around the world. Hello, thank you for tuning in. And when you talked about France, it just brought back, right before joining here, I was actually on TikTok watching a live feed from France as they are having their own revolution happen. I'm not sure that if anybody is aware, hopefully everybody is aware of what's happening in France, and just watching thousands and thousands of people marching in the streets and the huge police presence that's there. Of course, it immediately reminded me of when we have large actions and the police that show up, as we saw in the Utah trial, the Smithfield trial. They played footage of the activists on one side and the police on the other. And the same thing is happening in France, only on a much, much larger scale. And it had me thinking, I can't wait until this, hopefully it won't need to, but if it does, I want to see this for animal liberation, the same amount of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people out fighting for that right.
Yes, I agree, but we're going to jump to the courthouse right now. Thank you for that, Carla. If you could talk to your attorney and also maybe get just a little close to the courthouse, away from whoever's talking right behind you. I hear Curtis talking, I think.
Sorry. At least that means our sound is fixed, yeah?
Oh, yes. This is, tell us about the prosecution's reaction Identify yourself again. Thank you so much. And then tell us about the prosecution's reaction to the statements by the veterinarian, Kirsten Rosenberg, who was saying these animals are very sick with contagious coronavirus.
Sure. Okay. So, hi, Jane. Great to meet you. I'm Jessica Castellanos. I'm on the legal team, but I'm just a 1L at University of Chicago Law School. So I'm very grateful to have this experience. I thought that it was very interesting that they tried to play it as if our story was totally preposterous, because they were saying that with the numbers that we were giving, that all of the birds on the truck must have been infected then. And I get that it's a lot of scientific terminology, it's confusing, but like with human coronavirus, it also has a lot to do with how much time you're next to someone, whether that's, a chicken or a person, or, the proximity. So there were 5,000 birds in that truck, but that doesn't mean that all 5,000 were sick, because they were only in the truck for like 32 minutes. So, I think it's highly possible that like however many birds were in that one crate. And, Eligio Hernandez, how he testified that they're like 4 high and then like 20 wide, like, he admitted that there are about 5,000 birds on that truck and that they do 3 rounds at least every day. But I think that it might have confused the jury a little bit, but hopefully they weren't, swayed by the prosecution trying to imply that since we haven't had like a huge outbreak in humans caused by Foster Farms chickens, that means that we're just somehow, forging all of this paperwork like the necropsy. Like, that's not even possible, because it's not just Kirsten Rosenberg who testified as to the illnesses of the birds, but it's also a veterinarian at an ag institution like UC Davis. They mostly do, like chickens that are in the food system. So that's why on the necropsy it was written remarkable economic losses, because for the industry, this type of illness brings remarkable economic loss for a farm.
And what's your reaction, being associated with the defense legal team, that the jury is now almost 3 hours deliberating on a misdemeanor theft case?
I think it means that they're taking their duty seriously. I have faith. Wayne said in his closing that it's their duty, that if they believe that the defendants are not guilty, that they need to hold out and not let other jurors, kind of push them into just phoning it in, like, okay, I want to go home, guilty. And, I think that there may be some people on that jury that kind of see this as a slippery slope type thing. They don't want to say that rescuing animals is okay in this circumstance, because they're worried that that'll bleed over to other circumstances. But I think that Chris Carraway very talentedly argued that they applied Hadar Avaram's letter to the facts of this case. They didn't just take any healthy birds, and they're very talented caretakers of chickens. If they thought that was legal, they probably would have taken more birds, but they took the sick birds. And I think that some of the jurors are really taking that to heart.
Wow. And so the longer this goes on, do you think that's good news for the defense?
I think it's good news, because if the jury has to sleep on this, I don't know how any of their consciences, I know that we all believe differently, but I think that, anyone can agree that even if you don't care about animals, you don't want your pets to get sick from pet food, you don't want humans to be endangered. There are just so many different reasons to find these women not guilty. And I think that if they have time to sleep on it, that hopefully they will make the right decision. But I have confidence either way.
Wow. Okay. A cool cucumber. I like it. I'm the one who gets seriously at these trials during the verdict watch. I get so nervous that you think I was on trial, because just the anxiety of waiting. And I think different people react differently, but I'm starting to get a little anxiety ridden.
Jane, pull yourself together. We need to stay intact until this is done.
I'm losing it. Well, what happened to me during the Michael Jackson trial, while we were waiting, and there was quite a long deliberation, and it started getting to me, and I dropped my cell phone in the porta potty. Swear to God, this is a true story. And I had to fish it out and dry it with a blow dryer. And then many, many months later, I was out at some event at Staples Center, and this very elegant guy comes up to me, goes, "I know you." And I go, "Oh yeah, you know me." And he said, you're the one who dropped your cell phone in the porta potty. And that was just the ultimate humiliation. So anyway, there are fun little anecdotes from these cases that we remember moments that we remember. That one was quite humiliating. But it is a wait, and as you wait, you start wondering, well, what's going on in there? Are they fighting? There's that movie 12 Angry Men. Go ahead, Donnie.
I was, before we get a verdict, I've just been curious this whole time to know, maybe from Nathan. So what if they aren't? What if they're not acquitted? What if they're found guilty? What happens next? How quickly will they be sentenced? Will they, if they are sentenced to jail, would it really be a full 6 months, or could it be a week? And if they are sentenced to jail and they appeal, would they have to serve their time before the appeal, or could their sentence be delayed until, could their jail time be delayed until after an appeal? How does that, what happens if they're not acquitted?
I'm going to answer your question based on New York law, because I don't practice in California. I'm not admitted in California. So I don't know exactly what the procedure is, but I'll tell you how it would work in New York, and it's probably similar. So in New York, if a person is convicted or if they plead guilty, the case gets adjourned for sentencing. And in the interim, a client is interviewed by the Department of Probation, who makes a recommendation for sentencing. The prosecution makes a recommendation for sentencing, and the defense obviously asks for leniency. And then the sentencing in New York, and I think in California too, is then up to the judge. If they were convicted and sentenced, the judge probably can give them anywhere from time served to a fine to community service to a week, a month, or up to 6 months in jail. Every state has good time credit, which might cut off anywhere from a third to half of your sentence. Let me give you one sort of silver lining if there is a conviction. Jane, I think somebody asked earlier about what kind of precedent there would be if there's an acquittal. Would that mean that there's a right to rescue in California? And the answer to that is probably no, because the verdict is limited really just to guilt or not guilty of the accused. But if there were a conviction, and then there would obviously be an appeal of that conviction. If a higher appeals court looked at this case, looked at the facts of this case and said, this is not a theft, this is a rescue, that could go a long way to establishing a right to rescue. Now, obviously, I don't want them to be convicted, but I do think there is a silver lining there, because an appellate court actually makes rulings on the law. Whereas a jury just makes a finding of fact as to guilt or not guilty.
Nathan, Mick Davudian here. I have a question for you. To follow up, would anybody under the sun have standing to bring lawsuit, not necessarily against Foster Farms, but the city officials and the government officials for not taking action to protect the food supply and the public?
I'm trying to think how that would. Not anybody can do it. No. You'd have to prove harm. You'd have to be an affected person with standing. You'd have to have real injury, not fear of future injury. That's somebody who could bring a lawsuit against somebody like a Foster Farms. Let me just couch it with this one thing. I only practice criminal law. I was a prosecutor from 1998 until 2004, and I've been a defense attorney since. So that's all that's the only area I practice in.
You're the best we got, Mister.
I'm sorry for you for that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got 3 hours, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. We're 7 minutes away from the third hour of deliberations. Yes, they have to choose a jury foreperson, okay? And then they presumably have to go over. This is something that I'm interested in. There's no rules, right? In terms of, there are jury instructions and they have to choose a foreperson, but then after that, it's up to them how they want to conduct their deliberation. Is that not true, or are there rules as well for that, Nathan?
No, they can talk about anything that they want. I mean, we'll never know unless a juror after the fact speaks to media or to the attorneys and explains what happened, in the jury room. But there's no rules, and other than they're instructed to follow the law, something that I think jurors generally take seriously. But other than that, they're not asked to explain their verdict. It's just, are the accused guilty or not guilty?
But I mean, you wonder, okay, they picked the jury foreperson, right? And the jury foreperson's obviously is not going to just be neutral. So picking the jury foreperson is a big deal, because let's say that jury foreperson has connections to the animal agriculture industry, or let's say that jury foreperson is a vegan, just for argument's sake. Not saying there's any vegans on the panel. I don't know. But obviously, when you pick that person's got to have more power than the others. So that's interesting. I mean,
yeah, I don't think they really have more power than the others. Generally, the role of the foreperson is just sort of organizational. They might, if two jurors are arguing, they might play referee a little bit, but really it's about maybe taking a vote when they first go in the back, writing the notes to the judge with questions they might have. But it's really administrative. No juror has more power than another. And and one thing I will say that, and I've seen this, that if there comes a point where they are having trouble reaching a verdict, sometimes there might be one juror or two jurors who are exceptionally difficult. I've seen it where the foreperson will say, we're having a problem, a juror is not listening. They generally won't out the specific person, but they'll say we're having problems. And then the judge at that point will instruct them that, they have to listen to each other. And the judge will remind them of their important role, and that no one of them is more important than the other. And they have to keep an open mind and listen to their fellow jurors.
And we are entering now 4 minutes away. The jury has been deliberating for 3 hours. Let's remember, this is a misdemeanor theft case that normally would be covering trials. I will say, I've been in court where people will come in charged with very serious things, and they will be lickety split, bing, 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 sent away for God only knows how long. And then a celebrity comes in with their high-powered attorney, and the court transforms, and everything takes a long time. And so high-profile cases are very different than other cases. And I saw that with my own eyes. I mean, I was in court once where I was convinced that the defendant probably didn't know what was going on because he didn't speak the same language. And the attorneys were going back and forth, ping-ponging, and it was a public defender, and boom, they went off. And I thought, wow, imagine if that same situation had been with a celebrity, what the outcome would have been. Probably a lot different. And so our justice system, unfortunately, is not blind. And I don't say that because one of the defendants in this case is a celebrity. I'm only saying that because that's primarily the cases I've covered in the past as a reporter who's covered either celebrity cases or very dramatic cases that the defendants became, whether unpopular, hated celebrities in their own right, they gained fame from their trial. I'm talking about the Casey Anthony trial, the Jodi Arias trial. Those people weren't famous prior, but they became infamous during the trial, even though, of course, we have to say that Casey Anthony was acquitted. So we are now exactly, I'm going to say exactly because the last juror walked in a minute or two before 1:30. So I'm going to say jurors have deliberated for 3 hours. 3 hours. So that is kind of a milestone. Let's go back out and find out. There seems to be some activity. There's Wayne Chung. Can you tell us what's going on? Wayne just went into the courtroom. Okay, will you unmute yourself? Yeah, you're muted. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Oh, hey, it's Curtis. Yeah, we've been out here for about 3 hours, and Wayne and Alexandra and Alicia just walked back into the courtroom. I think they're just trying to find out if the judge is going to hold the jury past 4:30. Everything's been ending at 4:30 the last couple of weeks, so I think they just want to find out if they're going to send the jury home right now and tell them to come back tomorrow, or if they're going to, extend things on.
Yes, absolutely. So, again, it sort of went on and off mute. What do you think? Do you think 4:30 is when it normally ends? So therefore it's going to be over today. That means that the deliberations are going into tomorrow. Wow, that is wild. Yeah, Crystal, bring us up to date.
So everybody's going in the courtroom for some reason. Do we know why they're going? They're going in to just discuss whether
Find out what time people are coming back tomorrow. If people are coming back tomorrow, if they're going to extend till 5.
If we're gonna extend till 5, if we're gonna come back tomorrow morning. So I'm gonna shut it down and go in and see what they're all talking about, if that's cool. And then I'll come back out here and update you.
Yes, please let us know the second you find out. That would be great.
Curtis,
Thank you very much. Okay, they're going to find out. Yeah, this is, breaking news how it happens. And I don't think there was, I did not hear anything about a verdict. What we saw was, Wayne Chung, the attorney for Alexandra Paul, and a group of people walking in to basically find out what's happening. And there you see, they're going in court. So, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of times jurors will deliberate late into the night. I've experienced that myself many times. Verdicts come out in the dead of night. So I would say let them continue. But that being said, I don't think any request by the defense or the prosecution is going to have, it's the judge who would decide, wouldn't it, that, we've got to shut it down for today, Nathan?
Yeah, I think what will probably happen is the judge will, will ask the attorneys what they want to do. Do they want to, keep going? And the attorneys will probably say, yes, it's only 4:30. They've only been out for a few hours. They'll probably bring the jury in and ask them if they want to continue. Judges are generally very sensitive to the schedules of jurors. And if they make promises that they'll be done at 4:30 each day, then they try to honor those promises because they know the jurors have commitments. But they'll then ask the jurors if they want to stay. And the jurors actually will take a vote on that. And if they do, and from my experience, usually they do, especially if they're close. If they're close to a verdict, they always will want to stay. If they are far apart, then they'll probably say, let's come back tomorrow with, sort of clear heads.
Nathan, isn't it also true that they often will want to stay if it's approaching the weekend? Because, if I was a juror, I wouldn't want my weekend ruined.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, there's always sort of a joke about the 5 o'clock Friday verdict. That happens a lot. Which honestly,
Thursday. It's Thursday.
It's only
not
Thursday.
Friday.
It's only Thursday.
I'm actually surprised. I thought, well, first of all, the judge may say continue deliberating, and the juror. I think it's a big waste of time to call the jurors in to say, do you want to continue deliberating? If they want to continue deliberating, they will. If they don't, I assume that there was some kind of prearrangement that, well, court ends at a certain time. If you want to continue deliberating, you have to let us know. It's interesting. There have been no questions that we know of to the jury either. What do you make of that, Carla?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I got such butterflies. I started feeling, Jane, I'm with you as far as, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the anxiety of when I saw them walking in and so briskly, I thought, oh my goodness, here we go. I really am going to be very interested in hearing from these jurors if they will speak once this is all over. I think we saw in Utah, they were able to speak with several of the jurors, and we know that several of them went and met Lily and Lizzie, the two pigs that were rescued from Circle 4 Farms. And for one of them, it drastically changed that person upon meeting them, and they actually have become somewhat of an advocate. And so it's going to be really interesting if we're able to actually speak with the jurors after this is done and just get inside those minds and find out what they're thinking. But I'm on the edge of my seat for sure.
Well, I mean, wasn't it that one of the jurors asked a question of Wayne Shung, or during that trial where he was put on trial, possibly to go to jail for 10 years, he and his co-defendant, for rescuing these piglets from a Smithfield farm? Didn't one of the jurors ask, why did you only rescue 2? Which I thought was a great question, because it puts the whole idea on its head. It's like the juror is saying, why did you stop with 2?
Well, and I think that we saw that here as well. The argument of, why did you only take Jax and Ethan? It was sort of in the form where the prosecution asked, how many chickens would they have need to have rescued? Well, as they say, how many chickens would they have need to have stolen in order for this trial to be worth it to you? And several of the prospective jurors at that time all independently said, I don't know, maybe the whole truck. And, so I think there is somewhat of a thought process that, well, if they're all sick, gosh, why don't you rescue them all? But that's not really the point. We know that we cannot, as heartbreaking as it is for activists, we know that we cannot possibly rescue all of the sick and dying animals that are at these factory farms. And so, as Alexandra so beautifully said, this is just a means to an end. We know that there are sick and injured chickens on this truck, and we rescued them so that their stories could be told, so that we could bring the evidence to you so that you can see what is happening. That's so powerful.
Absolutely it is. And at this juncture, I think it bears repeating, what Alexandra said at the very onset about why she did what she did.
I'm proud to be going on trial facing a theft charge for rescuing sick, suffering birds from a Foster Farm slaughter truck. I spent 5 years starring on the television series Baywatch, playing a lifeguard who saved lives, and today I save lives in real life as an animal cruelty investigator. My name is Alexandra Paul. I've been in over 100 movies and television shows, but the thing I'm most proud of is my work rescuing animals from factory farms and slaughterhouses.
And I think she's been arrested something like a dozen times. Wow, what an extraordinary story. I mean, just on the face of it, what a great news story. This actress who's been on 100 TV shows, and this is what she chooses to do. I'm just so shocked that, in my opinion, there should be like a media scrum outside that courthouse with 100 cameras, because it is that important. And, it's such an indictment of our journalistic system, especially when you hear Lindsay Baker that these chickens were sick with something that humans could catch.
I'm going to have to pass. My dogs are having a fit, so please come back.
Okay. Yes, no worries. Let's go to Donnie Moss on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Jane, I just want to come back to something we were discussing earlier, if you don't mind, because it's been on my mind this whole time. We're talking about the fact that this trial is bigger than just the theft. And clearly these jurors, based on how long they're deliberating, know that it's bigger than just a theft. And I just can't help but wonder, you showed the Alexandra Paul video. I don't think that was shown in the courtroom. This was shown in the courtroom, what you're showing now. But I can't help but wonder if these jurors were, and I know they're not supposed to, but trying to answer their own questions. Every answer is just one Google search away after they were released for the day. I mean, what is the likelihood that some of them went and just did a Foster Farm search on their own so that they could see what motivated these two defendants to do what they're doing?
Well, they're not supposed to do that.
They're not supposed to, but are we allowed to question whether or not they actually do?
I mean, Nathan, you're the attorney. You take that one.
I'm sorry. Ask that question again, Donnie.
So my question is, they're deliberating for a long time. Obviously, they have questions, they have thoughts about this, and it's much bigger to them now than it was when they entered the courtroom and this was a petty theft. Isn't it possible that some of these defendants had questions and rather than not getting answers to them, they just went online when they got home? Every answer to every question that they have is just a Google search away. What's to stop a juror in any trial from just Googling what they want to know? Why did these women actually do this? What are we not hearing here? What are we not seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, there are real consequences potentially to doing it for a juror to do something like that, because inevitably or often when that does happen, they share with a fellow juror something that they've learned. And then that juror, they each have obligations to report misconduct. And I will never know how often it really happens and what percentage of the time it's reported, but it does happen. And I've seen jurors report it. And, the juror who is alleged to have, researched the case or read media will be questioned by the judge, and they can get in a lot of trouble. I mean, they can it can be criminal contempt. But I'll say this: I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it would be everybody's natural inclination to want to do that because it's obvious from all the objections that happen and the evidence that's kept from them that they don't get the whole story. But I think jurors sort of understand that. They know that both sides have to advocate and that there are rules of evidence that prohibit them from seeing and hearing certain pieces of evidence. And they're charged with deciding the case based on the facts. And, if a juror feels like they don't have the whole picture and feels like that alone leaves some doubt in their mind, they have to find not guilty. This is not a civil case where it's you have to choose which side you think is telling the truth. Do I believe one side more than the other? No, the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove each and every element of the crime, of the alleged crime, beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you're left feeling there was an absence of proof, then you vote not guilty and not necessarily give in to that temptation.
And Nathan, someone who was following the live stream asked, what happens if the decision isn't unanimous? And I don't know if we've covered that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a process. First, the foreperson will send out a note to the judge saying we can't reach a verdict. The judge will then instruct them to keep an open mind, speak to one another, and to go back in. Some judges, it's their practice to that could happen 2 or 3 times. But at some point, if they are hopelessly deadlocked, then a judge will declare a mistrial and it will be a hung jury. And then the prosecution has to choose whether to try the case again or not.
Well, let me say this. I think the fact that they're in there for so long now is so interesting. And guess who's back? Paige Parsons Roach back in the discussion. What happened to her? There we go. That was me. Yeah. So just to bring you up to date, Paige, just a couple of minutes ago, Wayne Shung, the attorney for Alexandra Paul, marched in very quickly to court. We all got all trembly because we thought, oh, is it a verdict? And then our reporter on the scene said that her understanding was that they were all just going back to find out how late are they going to deliberate, because it's already 4:43. They've deliberated more than 3 hours. Here she is. Let's find out what's going on. We were just talking about you.
So the jury went home for today, and it sounds like they're still talking about what time to come back tomorrow. We're a little bit confused because they have the judge has drug court or something until in the early morning, but they might come back at 1:30. But I'm like, why can't the jury just come back early and
They're
start
confirming
deliberating?
that.
It sounds like they are coming back
They're confirming that right now.
early.
They just
Okay.
asked to confirm, but it looks like the jury's going to continue at 10 for deliberations, but we probably won't open until 1:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the jury will continue at 10 for deliberations.
But wait, the judge is
But yeah,
not
come back to
available
court.
till 1:30? So if that doesn't make any sense, because what if they deliberate for half an hour, then they have a verdict, then what? Then you have to wait till 1:30?
Yeah.
I'm a little, does anybody know the answer to that? I'm a little unclear.
Or what if they have questions?
I can help you there, Jane.
Comes in at 10 and they deliberate for half an hour and then reach a verdict.
Yes, then they won't. Then the verdict won't be read until 1:30.
They just sit and wait.
Wow.
I guess.
So you're pretty sure, Curtis, that the verdict would not be read until 1:30?
That's what it sounds like. Wayne is in there trying to confirm all this, but that's what the clerk made it sound like. They came to the door and answered Wayne. The clerk said that the judge is already gone for the day, but she's going to try to find out the answer to that. But so far, that's the best. To the best of our knowledge, that's what it sounds like will happen. So they're going to come in at 10, deliberate.
Uh-oh, what's going on here? Uh-oh. Okay, are you on? Oh, here we go. Curtis, how you doing? We'll go to you right now. So what's going on?
Oh, Wayne just came in. Wayne just came in.
Hold up. Don't do this.
Well, I don't think I can extend your.
Wayne, what's the deal? Everyone online wants to know. What's the deal? Everyone online wants to know.
The closing arguments today, I thought Chris did an amazing job. I think your arguments are strong, but it's an uphill battle whenever you're going up against a big company in a county where that has a lot of influence. And these are novel arguments for a lot of people. I mean, most people have never heard of open rescue. And I mean, there were some points where we lost the ability to make certain arguments, and they lost the ability to make certain arguments. I will say, I thought there was something incredibly inappropriate that happened in closing argument. I'm not even sure I want to talk about it yet, because I'm going to think about exactly what we want to say about it and what we can do about it, but it was actually kind of infuriating. So what can you do? I mean, it's not a perfect system, and there's a lot of miscarriages of justice, and I thought what happened at closing was one of them.
Do we know what's happening tomorrow with the jury? Are they coming back at 10 and then they'll deliberate and then
back at 10, and at any point we can get a call, come back to the courthouse within 10 minutes and look at the verdict.
But if it's before 1:30, then we have to wait till 1:30, right?
No. Yeah, that's
okay.
The clerk just mentioned to me that it could be something where they wait until 1:30 because the judge is too busy with other matters, or it could be something where the judge steps out of his courtroom or just pauses, whatever his morning calendar is, and quickly does our verdict. So we'll see. But I'm proud of the entire team. I don't think I was at my best, but I never do. I was okay. And tired, but I just try and channel these beautiful, powerful women. I mean, I was just thinking about how they felt when they were taking that poor bird out of that truck. And that's what kind of keeps me plugging on. And thinking about the birds themselves, how much they're fighting to live. It's unbelievable what we do to these poor creatures. And I got the sense there are a couple jurors that were moved when I was doing my closing, which is good. But, they're also told by the prosecutor and the judge over and over again, you have to follow the law. You have to follow the law. And my view is, yeah, follow the law. And acquit these women because they were innocent. They are innocent. But there are a lot of deceptive, misleading arguments made by the prosecutor. I will say, I think we predicted them. I mean, the entire activist stunt thing, I knew he was going to say it. You get more cliched? Come on. But yeah, we'll see.
Hey Wayne, it's Nathan. I got a quick question for you. Has the jury asked for any readback or instruction on the law?
Yeah, they've asked one question, and I just want to make sure I check the rules to be certain that we're I don't see a reason why we can't disclose the question, but I don't think it's that important. That they have asked one question so far.
Wow. Are you surprised at all that the deliberations are going into a second day?
No, I think it's probably a good sign for us, because the easiest thing for them to do is just to vote to convict very quickly. It's like, you saw the video, they did it. What's there to talk about? And the fact that there's a longer, more extended conversation suggests that jurors are being thoughtful, which is what we want. We want them to be thoughtful. So I think it's a good sign.
Wow. Well, your closing got rave reviews from everybody we talked to who heard about it, but you say you're always very tough on yourself.
Yeah. I've said this before, but there are times when you're speaking where you just feel like this mind meld with your audience and you're on the exact same emotional wavelength. And it's incredibly powerful when you're there. And there are times when you're not. And I think I was vibing with like a couple jurors. I don't think I was vibing with all. And that's always the goal when you're speaking. You want to create that vibe. So I also just feel like I'm not at my best, to be honest. I haven't been at my best for, well, really months, but I'm trying. And I'm not saying I'm terrible. I'm still I wouldn't be representing Alexandra if I didn't think I could do a competent job. So obviously I think I would have just recused myself and say, I'm just not in the right mental space to be doing this. But I know there's a level that you can reach in terms of persuasion and speaking that I haven't really reached in recent court cases, including Utah. So,
Wayne, Mick Davudian here. I want to say how much we love you. Nobody better there to be there than you are, honestly. And I know you've been going through your own losses recently, so our minds, our hearts are with you. I do have a question for you. For your closing, one of the things we're kind of very frustrating for those of us observing this is there's no webcast, so we can't really understand what's happening at any given time. But I understand you brought in some levity during your closing. Let me see if I can paraphrase this. You said, if the birds were sick, you must acquit. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I had basically 3 lines that I wanted the jury to remember in making their decision. One was, there's no intent, you must acquit. The birds were sick, you must acquit. If this is a rescue, not a theft, you must acquit. And it's a little bit of a play off Johnny Cochran's old line. I actually debated whether to even use it, because I think most people think OJ was guilty. So when he used that line, it was like to get someone off who didn't deserve to get off. And obviously I feel very differently about marathons. But I just think it was such a memorable line. And I think rhyme and rhythm and alliteration, these are things that just help people remember things, if nothing else. And I wanted them to leave remembering that, hey, the prosecution has a burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that these chickens had some value to Foster Farms. We presented overwhelming evidence that they were being treated like garbage by Foster Farms. So to me, it's an easy decision legally and morally, but the value question to me is pretty definitive.
And we know you're tired. We don't want to overextend, but my final question is regarding the bombshell testimony by Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg. We've spent so much of our day discussing it because there were some pretty serious illnesses that these birds were infected with. Is there any way to follow up? Is there any way to highlight that for government, for media, that would show that this trial is about a heck of a lot more than 2 women taking chickens off of a truck? This is about the condition of those chickens and whether they pose a threat.
Oh, we've tried, Jane, many, many times. And, unfortunately, we contacted Merced office of the USDA, which technically should be investigating slaughterhouses in this county. The USDA is familiar with a lot of these things because they inspect these facilities. They don't do enough disease testing, but they certainly know there are lots of sick and injured animals inside the slaughterhouse in Livingston. And I mean, the reality is, it's kind of what I said, I think, yesterday, that the USDA's mission as an agency is to promote agriculture in this country. You cannot simultaneously be responsible for promoting an industry and regulating. That is the fox guarding the hen house, right? It doesn't make any sense. But this is the way the country's been run for hundreds of years. And one of the many reasons why we need pretty dramatic change. It's not enough for us to, skirt the margins and add a little regulation there and remove a little regulation there. We need a complete transformation of the system. And that's not just for the animals, it's for human health too. And I think this trial has certainly been a demonstration of that. I have almost zero doubt that there are people who died because of Foster Farms chickens and the neglect and disease in their chickens who no one knows about, including the people who died in their families. simply because of the lack of transparency in the system. And that's an outrage not just for animal rights actors. That's an outrage for anyone in this country who cares about kids, cares about the elderly, cares about the immune compromised, cares about anyone who's in a hospital. Because when you're in a hospital and you get surgery, you know, your immune system gets affected. You've got all these open wounds. There's a very promising opportunity for bacteria and viruses to attack you and infect you because of how vulnerable you are when you're in a hospital. And, you know, as Dr. Rosenberg said, something like enterococcus, there are different studies that give different estimates, but some studies suggest up to 66.7% of people are dying from enterococcus infections inside these hospitals. I think the number is like 5,000 people die every year. And a lot of the genetic tracing of these bacteria has traced them back to chicken in the supermarkets. It's the same variants.
Oh, well, it's a lot to think about. And, you know, you're going to be back at 10 a.m., I guess, with your team waiting, and we'll just find out. I mean, you know, Nathan's talked about the Friday evening. Maybe that's what we'll have. But we'll be here live at 10 o'clock tomorrow as we get started again. And we certainly hope that everybody will join us. We have people watching from all over the world, from Morocco, from Tokyo, from France, from Canada, and across the United States. So people are very, very interested in the outcome. And this is a cliffhanger. I did expect a verdict today. I'm very surprised that there wasn't a verdict today. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. And I mean, what else are you going to say? Anybody else have last questions for Wayne? He's got to be exhausted.
Wayne, will they do the read back first in the morning and then let them go back and deliberate?
So I don't even know if the read back for this question is necessary, and I might be giving away the nature of the question to some degree. But the judge has not given us any indication what he's planning to do. All we heard from the clerk is just be available. We'll call you and be 10 minutes away so you can come to the courthouse. I don't think there's going to be anything that needs to be done at 10 a.m. tomorrow based on my reading of the question. So we'll see.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Curtis, for having Wayne. And there's a train in the background. They're in Merced County. Wow. You know, Americana, but look what's going on there. This is a shocker. The jury deliberated 3 hours. I mean, have you ever seen, and they're gone for the day and we'll be back tomorrow. Nathan, have you ever seen anything like this on a misdemeanor?
I don't think on a misdemeanor, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a jury go overnight on a misdemeanor case. I mean, most misdemeanor cases don't go to trial, but they do happen once in a while. But generally, the verdict is pretty quick. But this is a hotly contested case. I mean, this is not your run-of-the-mill misdemeanor or your run-of-the-mill allegation of theft. So I'm not surprised. Honestly, I'm not surprised, and I stick with Wayne. I agree with Wayne, and I stick with what I said earlier, which is it's a 45-second video, and the longer they're out, the more that I think they're open to the defenses that have been offered.
And what about Curtis, or if Crystal wants to take this, what about Alexandra and Alicia? How are they doing? Because this is stressful. I mean, I'm getting really codependent on them because I know how nerve-wracking it is for me just as an observer. And then you think that, their lives are on the line in terms of going to jail for up to 6 months. That may not sound like a lot, but for any of us who have spent even, 24 hours in jail or 12 hours in jail, me as a reporter, I can tell you it's a lot. It's a lot. Any day in jail is a lot.
Jane, I think I see Alexandra behind Curtis. Can we talk to her?
Yeah, I'm gonna. So Dean over here is filming Wayne, and Dean asked me to wait until he's done filming Wayne until I go talk with Alexandra and Alicia. So I will get you some FaceTime with Alexandra and Alicia here in a few minutes. But I don't know if Crystal maybe wants to answer the question about jail.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. We'll go back to you. What, there you are, Crystal. You're a veterinarian. You are very involved in this. I mean, what is your emotional reaction to this? Is extraordinary. It's a misdemeanor, and they're coming back tomorrow.
I know. I wonder if the jury has any idea. Like, they must think, something's up. This is a big deal because it's gone on for so long. It's just a misdemeanor, but like there must be some serious prison jail time or something. This is a pretty serious thing. But Alexandra and Alicia are both so chill. Like, they're just like, yeah, whatever happens. Of course, they want to be acquitted, but they're just so relaxed. And I am, for them. Like, we're all just kind of very excited, and whatever happens. But we learn so much from each of these trials, and we just get better every single time. So, just the learning opportunity here is so great and powerful. And it just really inspires a lot of people to learn about these things. So either way, like, yes, of course, we're hoping for an acquittal, but if not, people are, they're accepting of it too.
Oh, and thank you. Here's Alexandra coming up. We're going to talk to her right now. And both of them here. Hey, both of the defendants. Hi. How are you holding up? I mean, we're all like jittery and nervous and anxious. How are you holding up, Alexandra and Alicia?
We're not anxious because we did our best. We had amazing representation. So, and whatever happens, we know that we did the right thing. The law doesn't agree with us now. They will soon.
Yeah, and I'm happy it's taking them a while. It means they're talking about something, which is good. And honestly, either way, guilty, not guilty, I told Alexandra from the beginning of this trial, we already won. We got that New York Times article. There's so many conversations starting. That's the point. We're trying to push that needle forward, and we have definitely done this. So, we're ready to face the consequences. And I'm just happy Ethan and Jax have gotten talked about so much, and we're bringing so much attention to, what's happening to chickens and animals all over the world every day.
Wow, what an incredible attitude. Were you surprised that they are going home? I mean, we just had our attorney, Nathan, say he's never heard of a jury taking more than 1 day on a misdemeanor case.
Well, they got the case at 1:30, so it's been 3 hours. Nathan, is that extraordinarily long for a misdemeanor?
No, it's probably it isn't. I mean, often jurors will stay past 4:30, so that could factor into my thought process. But you just don't normally see jurors want to come back the next day on a misdemeanor charge. But it tells me they're taking it seriously.
Yeah. It's a good thing. They even had some questions, wanted to look at testimony again. So that's good. They want to get it right.
Yeah, they seem to be thoughtful. We tried when we were doing jury selection to pick people who we thought were thoughtful people, because we understand this is an unconventional case. And so, hopefully our instincts and our team's instincts were right. And, it's in their hands now. So.
Wow.
I want to know what you all think.
I was surprised. I expected a verdict by this afternoon. And, there's often times where the jurors will say, well, we're close. Let us work through dinner and we'll come back. And so the fact that they didn't do that, either, they've got obligations, like maybe they have to pick up their child from school, or there's something that they can't change. But to me, it says maybe they're not in agreement, that there's a dispute, and that always raises the prospect of a mistrial where they might say, we can't reach a decision. This is sheer speculation. As with anything that involves a jury, we don't know. We do, look at their faces and try to analyze, but it's all basically just guesswork, Alexandra.
That's right. It's all speculation until we get the news. And when we do get the news, Alicia and I will be, ready for whatever happens, and the movement will move forward. We're good.
Now, just to make sure we understand it correctly, so it's ended today. The jurors will be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and they'll start deliberating, but the judge has something else that he has to do. So they'll continue deliberating. He'll be available at 1:30, but even though he's not available till 1:30, there's a possibility that he could pop out of whatever else he's doing and hear the verdict at any time. Is that the correct Is that how you understood it?
Yes. And I myself would like, if there happens to be a guilty verdict, I would like an immediate sentencing myself. I believe we all should be able to hear, all the people here should be able to, they've been here all the last 10 days. They should be able to hear it all the way through. So I personally would like to, follow it all the way through, no matter what the verdict. So tomorrow will be a big day.
Yeah, but respectfully, Nathan, I want to ask you from a legal standpoint, just because Alexandra wants sentencing doesn't mean that she'll get it if it goes that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, in New York, and again, I don't practice in California, in New York on a misdemeanor, if a client of mine were convicted, they can waive the probation report and ask for sentencing immediately. The judge doesn't have to grant that, because the judge is going to hear a recommendation from the prosecutor and obviously hear advocacy from the defense attorneys. So like everything else, it'll be up to the judge. But I wouldn't be surprised if on a misdemeanor case, the judge would say, we can sentence right now.
But wait,
but I don't think
they want us out of here. They want all these people out of here. It's threatening. Because then, people are going to go over the DAs. Everyone wants us gone, I think. So if I were to guess, I would think that the DA would say, yeah, fine, let's get it over with so these people can leave.
But then you would appeal. Then, Alexandra, if that were to happen, you would appeal, right, immediately? And then presumably you would remain free pending appeal.
That's up to Wayne. I do basically whatever Wayne wants. I do, because he's like the smartest man in the room.
Oh, wow. Well, gee, I would have a lot more questions. Just go ahead, Paige.
Real quick. Hi, Alexandra. I want to ask you, did you feel, we heard that there was a larger crowd in the courtroom today watching what was going down. Do you feel perhaps they were starstruck? Baywatch star in the room, or were they there as supporters for this freedom for the animals, right to rescue?
There were unfamiliar faces. I don't think it had to do with me. I think it had to do with curiosity about the trial, because it's been such an interesting trial for everybody. No one thought that A, this trial would go this long, B, that it would have so much depth to it. I think it surprised everybody, including the jurors.
And also the protests that have occurred outside the DA's office and the courthouse, I'm just showing a little video. Those are very dramatic. And obviously that gets the attention of people in the town, looky-loos, as they say, who are curious. I heard that the mayor of the town was in the courtroom, and he, according to Nathan, has some connections with the DA's office. He worked there in the past. Is that true, Nathan?
I think he's still there.
From what I've read, he's a career prosecutor in that office.
Wow. He only gets paid $100 a year or something to be mayor. So I think it doesn't pay to be mayor. So you got to have another job. That's hearsay though. So don't quote me.
Oh, wow. So you think he still works there? Wow.
Yeah, that's why they actually said that it's not unusual for him to drop in on court cases. Huh. Yeah, but he's been there several days. He's been there for the last
3 or 4 days.
Yeah, 3 or 4 days.
So a personal question: how do you unwind? Like, what are you going to do tonight just to, stay serene? Do you meditate, take a long walk? What's on the agenda?
I'm going to go back to the Airbnb where Wayne and Alicia and Jessica, who's assisting Wayne, are, and we'll probably just hang out and eat some good vegan food.
Okay, I want to tell you that people are saying, love you, Alexandra and Alicia, compassionate, caring, and brave justice heroes. They're calling you sheroes. They're superheroes. There's a lot of compliments coming from our global audience. We have people watching in Japan, in Morocco, in France, in Quebec, and across the United States. So yes, and this one's from Paige. You're both sheroes. So does that, Carla had said that having support there is really crucial. I guess the last question, has the support you've gotten from the dozens of people who are there to support you helped you maintain your attitude?
It's so, I had this thought, like, what if it was I was the only defendant? I think it would just have been such a different experience, because having Alicia at my side means so much. She's not only such an experienced activist, she's a wonderful person. And then having all these supporters from DXE, just been amazing. It really has made me feel supported and not alone, and it's wonderful to have people who share the same passion as you, especially when the world at large kind of calls you an extremist.
Wow. I want to thank you. I know it's been a very long day. I don't know how you look so good and you sound so calm. I'm like losing it here being on this air for, well, it's been quite a while, since 1:30. So that's 4.5 hours. Thank you. And we will join you again tomorrow, starting at, we'll figure it out, 10 or 10:30. We will join you. Thank you so much, Alexandra. You are so gracious to talk to us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Curtis, for arranging that. That was wonderful to be able to talk. I just want to get everybody's reaction, because what they call courage is grace under pressure. She is not frustrated, angry. She's the same, just
very important,
charming person that she always is. I'll have what she's having. Donnie Moss.
She and Alicia and Wayne are all so humble, yet by taking these risks and provoking this prosecution, they're really changing history. So I'm flabbergasted when I hear them, speak with such humility, as if what they're not doing isn't extraordinarily historic and courageous.
Yes. I mean, who else would like to comment? Because honestly, it is inspiring, to see somebody who's so cool, calm, and collected. Not my forte, cool, calm, and collected. That's not going to be on my gravestone. Nate, we'll go to Mick on that. I mean, how does she do it?
It seems like it's in her core. I mean, it's just part of who she is. And obviously they went into this completely selfless, right? So the outcome of what happens and consequences on her own personal life, it seems like she's completely put it behind her. She's looking at this as an action to better humanity, to better our future, which is amazing.
It's just, I think it should be in the cover of People magazine. Frankly, it's an amazing story. We're going to move into final thoughts. Paige, your final thought for today as the jury gets ready to come back tomorrow.
I'm hoping that the jury is out there deliberating on their moral compass. I am going to say that again, that they are thinking about what they would do if they saw an animal suffering, if they saw an animal who was in distress. Most of us move out of the way if we see an animal on the road. We're not going to run it over. We're going to do something about it. We're going to move. So that's what I'm in hopes for. They've done their job. Wayne, the other prosecutors, they have done their job by getting the information out there, sharing what they can. Not having that footage be able to be shown was problematic, I would say. But I think that with their arguments, they have done an incredible job with getting the right information out. So right to rescue.
Oh, great. Carla, final quick thought.
It has just been an incredible day. We've seen a lot of testimony from the last few days. And I think that my final thought is that the jury is taking this seriously, and that is incredible. I think that seeing Alicia and Alexandra cool under pressure, just okay with whatever happens, knowing that people are now seeing what they wanted people to see, which is the truth of what happens at foster farms and what we all know happens at factory farms around the world. And I'm grateful that this jury is really looking at what they've presented with. And I think even if they follow the letter of the law, that they are going to come out with a not guilty verdict. But if for some reason there is a guilty verdict, as was mentioned previously, probably by Nathan, that could be in some ways even better, because that would give the opportunity to move this along in a way that could change the law. So as everybody's been saying, and mostly Alicia and Alexandra, this has been a win either way, and I am already waiting for tomorrow.
Whoa. Well, we're going to be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Who here? I want to give a real shout out to Crystal Heath and Curtis Vollmer. Let's hear it for them. Doing an incredible job. Thank you. We couldn't do this without you, to be quite honest with you. It would just be us talking. You bring us the action, and it's so important. Would you be willing to join us again tomorrow, Curtis and Crystal, along with our panel, when we reconvene at 10 o'clock?
I'll be at work. I'll be doing surgery on a bunch of kitties probably. So I can't. And then I'm working 2 shifts tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping the jury doesn't decide on Friday and I can come back Monday, but.
I think call me crazy, but I think they're going to have a decision tomorrow. Curtis, will you be willing to join us again tomorrow?
If not me, somebody. I'm sure there's going to be a rather lengthy meeting tonight between the DXC organizers that are out here, and we got to have a game plan for if A verdict, then we do Z, and if B verdict, we do Y, with regards to actions or demonstrations or other things that might happen. So I can't guarantee that I or anyone else will be available, but I think we should be able to get you somebody on for your live show. And with regards to this is something that reminded me of something when Alexandra was talking, and you were saying how calm, cool, and collected she was. If you covered any of the DXC cases or of anything of that nature, it seems to be that all of the defendants are pretty calm, cool, and collected, and that's because I think of the I'm going to shamelessly plug DXC here, but the extensive training that everyone goes through, and then also just the community that we've built. I know that a lot of the things that people see or hear of DXC tends to be the arrests and the big disruptions and the protests, and it's like, well, yeah, because those things are flashy and they catch headlines. But a lot of what we do is really community building. We've got these meetups every Saturday in the Bay, and we do a lot of other activist development types of things and a lot of trainings. And so that when people are in these situations, they do feel good, and they do feel like things are going to be fine. So it can be really hard. Like, you can't really do a lot on your own. It sucks to say, like, we're trying to take on this huge machine, right? So I would say, like, don't be alone. Like, find a community, get involved, educate yourself, train yourself. If you don't know, ask questions, find people to train you. And it becomes a lot easier when you're surrounded by a lot of, beautiful, like-minded individuals.
Well said. Thank you both. I couldn't have said it better myself. Wow. It is a community. DXC is not just an organization of individuals, but there's that real community feeling that I've experienced going to their convergence marches, which are some of the most colorful.
Yeah, come to the conference, by the way, at liberationconference.com. That's happening in June.
Yeah, we'll be there. It's an extraordinary conference. I mean, absolutely mesmerizing, several days. And Unchained TV will be there covering it. And we're going to be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So thank you so much, everybody. Raise your hand if you'll join us. Are you raising your? Yay!
No. I'll join you at some point, not at 10 a.m.
Beauty rest. Got to get your beauty rest. Okay.
We need you, Nathan.
We need Nathan for sure. We need all of you. Mick, hopefully you'll join us during the early hours. We hope everybody joins us. We'll back tomorrow at 10 a.m. for more trial coverage. Keep it right here on Unchained TV. And of course, check out Foster Farms Trial on Twitter. There's a YouTube with extensive court clips that you can watch, and we'll pull some up from the closing arguments to show you tomorrow. And I just think this is really history in the making. Be part of it. Be part of history in the making, because what they're doing is absolutely extraordinary, and we will look back, okay? Just like we look back on the Salem witch trials. We go, what the heck were they thinking? We're going to look back and say, what were they thinking putting these two women on trial, okay? I don't have the answer to that question, but I do think it's a very important question to ask. Thank you, everybody, and
I'm proud to be going on trial facing a theft charge for rescuing sick, suffering birds from a Foster Farm slaughter truck. I spent 5 years starring on the television series Baywatch, playing a lifeguard who saved lives, and today I save lives in real life as an animal cruelty investigator. My name is Alexandra Paul. I've been in over 100 movies and television shows, but the thing I'm most proud of is my work rescuing animals from factory farms and slaughterhouses.
Thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific, 11/12, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, Unchained. It's Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here and covering the trial. We really appreciate it.
Young chickens are fattened up in filthy conditions before they're loaded on a truck and transported for slaughter.